Ready? Okay. Call to order, February 25th, 2020, meeting of the North Andover Planning Board. We're going to do the A&R first, then I think we're going to go to 4 High Street, and then we'll go through the rest of the agenda. 115, 125 Windkist Farm Road. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Peter Barberry. I represent the applicant in this. What we're seeking to simply do is to create a 1-acre lot of the existing house. So there are a couple new lot lines that separate the existing house with the balance of the parcels that we created going to the farm, ultimately used as part of the farm operations. Access to both the lots will be the access that's currently there. So there's no new access, no new construction within the roadway. We're simply swapping some land to the farm parcel.
Will all parcels remain compliant with zoning?
I'm sorry?
Will all parcels remain compliant with zoning?
Yes.
Okay.
You'll notice on the plan, which is of course the wrong orientation right now, there's 2 parcels that are marked as non-buildable, but those are going to be conveyed to the larger parcels. The inspector of building has reviewed the plan, had no concerns. The Conservation Commission reviewed the plan. They did note that there is a drop at the rear of the property and that there's some wetlands there. But other than that, she had no other comment.
The whole thing is, I'm
Yeah,
having
I'm
a
gonna
little
switch it
problem.
around. I'm gonna bring up the Lucas plan so you can see that. So at the rear here, you'll see that it's a down gradient and there's some wetlands down here.
So I'm just trying to understand what's taken from and added to.
Okay.
Here.
So
I'm gonna bring back the A&R
what is
plan.
essentially happening, Luke, can you go back to that
Yep.
big screen?
Okay.
Is this back half, there's a new lot line going in there and a little sliver of lot line going in there. Both of those parcels will now be added to the main parcel.
So that existing housing lot that has the unusual shape it wraps around, you're taking basically most of the land that
I'm sorry?
exceeds- The lot, which has an unusual shape today, correct? I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
you're taking
presently.
most of that and
Right.
adding it back into
Right,
the.
so now the big lot will basically just cut across there. This will all be the big lot.
Okay. So
essentially, you're taking the 5-acre lot, shrinking it to 1 acre, the rest of the
Right.
land will be.
We're cutting off an acre of the 5 acres. It'll keep the existing house with the existing frontage on the street with the existing driveway, and the 4 acres will be transferred to the big lot. So we've noted on the plan, and again, there's a little sliver that's going to the big lot right there as well. We've noted on the plan, both the remaining 4 acres and that sliver are non-buildable to be assigned to the main lot.
And the remaining lot will still have enough frontage, even though you're taking a sliver.
I'm sorry?
You're not gonna take any of the frontage away from the
No,
lot? Yeah.
no, well, a little bit of the frontage, but there's still
Still
requirement to meet the
sufficient,
zoning
okay.
bylaw, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so any issues from planning?
No, I just want to go over again the requirements for an A&R endorsement. The lots shown on such plan must front on one of 3 types of parcels. This is a private way that's been in existence and it has enough frontage via the zoning bylaw. The lots shown on such plans must meet the minimum frontage requirements as specified, as you just discussed. And the planning board's determination that the vital access to such lots is contemplated as otherwise exists, so it has vital access.
Okay.
So I make a motion to direct the planner to endorse the Form A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else real quick before we do 4 High Street? Monica, is there anything else that's really quick?
Really quick.
I don't see anything that jumps
No.
out at me. Okay. All right, 4 High Street, Avalon Bay Communities, Inc., application for Subdistrict A, definitive master plan special permit. Good evening. If you could state your name
Sure.
for the record.
David Gillespie from Avalon Bay.
Great.
Stephen Schwartz, Golston and Stewart.
Okay. So I think how we'll do this tonight is, I think there were a couple of items that you guys are going to address with us from the last meeting and do those. If the board has any questions about those, go for it. Then we'll take public comment, again, recognizing we've been going at this for several months, so most specifically as to what we're talking about now, but we will be, after that, going through a potential draft decision. So if you have comments on that as we go through it, or before, you can make comments on that. And then the plan hopefully is to take a vote on that decision tonight. That's the goal. We'll see what happens. Okay, go
Great.
for it.
So I'll give you a quick update on things that have happened since our meeting earlier in February. We submitted the architectural plans we previously discussed, which were for the 4-story, 170-unit plan. There's updated civil plans which respond to the peer review comments and close out the application. We've updated the landscape plan to deal with some comments from the Conservation Commission as well as one request from Sutton Pond Board. From our perspective, the peer reviews are closed out. I think there's a few conditions just to close out a few items on our final plans when they're completed. We've removed some of the balconies that overlook the High Street residential abutters and the Granite Building at Sutton Pond. We met with Sutton Pond, discussed mitigation. I also met with Don Moriarty, who's the gentleman who's brought up the gas and water lines. He showed me the things that he was aware of, and we'll mark those on the plans as needed. And what we'll do is, prior to construction, we'll make sure we locate those with ground penetrating radar so that we don't disturb those utilities. And everything else, when we submitted the WB50 truck turning out of the loading dock that has to do with the subdivision, there was a question about whether the 50-foot truck would work in the subdivision road, and we submitted a truck turning plan from Ty and Bond that responded to that.
Okay.
Yep. And there was a request to update the perspective views from Sutton Pond, to update those with the 4-story building. So we previously had them with the 5-story. We've submitted those with the 4-story building.
Okay, so why don't we go through some of those things? So thank you for taking all of those actions. So talk about you said you removed some balconies.
Yep.
Can you, is there pictures, or can you tell us what you did?
If you look at this graphic here, you start either building, building A, you start building A on the lower building. You can see an arrow represents a balcony. So what you'll see is where the Granite Building is, and the 2 or 3 units that are right on that corner there, closest to the Granite Building, we removed those balconies. And you'll see a similar treatment behind the clubhouse for the end that faces towards the neighbors on High Street. We've removed those balconies as well.
So now we have balconies facing the trees, balconies facing the parking lot on Building B, and A, balconies facing the parking lot. Okay. And underneath, okay.
So did you want to look at the truck image again?
Yeah, if we could show the truck plan, that would be helpful. And then from there, after that, maybe the street views.
And the population and bedroom mix transition from 250 down to
Sure.
Yes.
170.
This is the truck turning plan that Ty and Bond put together for the 50-foot truck, the WB50 using the loading dock. Gene Christie from Ty and Bond's here if you have any questions related to this.
Okay.
What's that?
Sideways. I have hard copies of this. It'll make everyone's life easier.
Rotate what's in
I think there were updated numbers in the draft decision too, right?
There were updated numbers in the draft decision. What this is this is a comparison that we were asked for last time that said, what was your population and school-age children numbers at 250, 200, and now at 170? And what you can see is they've essentially gone down proportionally with the unit count.
And so what are the final,
Sure. Okay. There we go. So just going from left to right, you have the type of unit, the projection of household size per unit based on the size, and then number of units. Population count went from 411 with 250 down to 284 with 170. And to the far right is the school-aged children, which was 44 when we were at 250 and is 31 under the current unit mix.
And so the current proposal is for 15 studio, 65 one-bedroom, 82 two-bedroom, and 8 three-bedroom?
Yes.
How do you come up with the numbers? Are they based on other projects?
We have sort of a general guideline of where we want to be for each site, and we do that through market research. And then what we would do is the architectural plans sort of end up, the footprint of the building was fixed when we went to this, so what we did was, worked with
No,
the
I
internal
mean,
unit.
I'm sorry, maybe
Yeah.
that wasn't clear. I meant in terms of how are you figuring out that an average number of school-aged children?
Oh, this was all pulled straight out of the fiscal impact study that was done by the third party and was peer-reviewed by RKG, by the town. So
Okay.
those household unit size numbers and the school-aged children per unit, I just pulled those out of the previously peer-reviewed fiscal impact study that was done before
Okay,
and applied those factors against the new net bedroom mix.
okay.
As I remember, that you initially this is from back in the summer, I believe it said that, Avalon has its own database from apartments they've done all
Sure.
over, and then then your consultant as well as the peer reviewers have different databases to pull the population studies from, correct?
Yes, that's where where the data comes from.
It just seems low to me, that you don't, out of that
I
number
mean,
of 2 and 3 bedrooms, you'd only get 31.
But I mean, I think it's based on a lot of statistics from a lot of places. I mean, it's intuitively sort of instinctive that the numbers would be higher, but I think it's the same phenomenon back 20 years ago when we were building single-family houses. They said, oh, there's gonna be 15 houses, that's 30 kids in the school. It doesn't come anywhere close to that, so you'd be
Okay.
surprised at the mix. So I think it's probably statistical information that's pretty valid over a broad number of situations.
And this is the same data that the assistant superintendent reviewed over the summer.
Right, he did come around. I think the things that limit the number of school-aged children are obviously the number of bedroom sizes, the rents. It's difficult. I think more of these are either, when the rents are this high, people working in Boston, in the city and things like that, or, potentially people, roommates sharing, So I think that limits. I think what we found over the last 5 or 6 years with the apartments that have come online, that these numbers are usually either pretty accurate or high, generally. Can't say that will necessarily be the case, but that's been the pattern, at least so far. All the ones that have come online generally the estimates have been higher than what has actually materialized.
Have we seen anything around the number of children in the apartments as they age and maybe rents fluctuate? Like, should we expect a spike? Is there any data like that we have seen where it might increase 10 years from now as they age, and do we care?
Practically speaking, I think you're gonna have a constant churn of that sort of thing. I mean, my instinct is it's not gonna vary very much at all over time.
I haven't seen that data yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, can we see the architectural renderings?
The architectural plans?
You might know the street view first, Beth? I just happen to have the street view up first, the
Oh,
last bit
that's
of
fine.
new information. if you
That's
don't mind.
fine.
It's easier.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Didn't know that was in town.
This was a request from the last meeting, which is an update of the views from the Sutton Pond parking lot to the 4-story buildings. We just updated them with the 4-story. We didn't include the previous 5-story, but this is just an update which shows a floor cutoff from the last time you reviewed it.
So just go back can you go back up? Gene?
That was
So
just
this is
Nothing.
current.
Yep.
Okay, so each slide is current versus
Yeah.
projected. Okay, just so everyone knows what we're looking at. Okay. It's a little slower. Okay. Yep. Okay.
This is the one that actually has the biggest impact. This is the one that has the largest impact, going from 5 to 4.
The largest change in.
The largest change, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Trying to see the architectural plans?
Sure.
They're all in the revised drawings, right? Remember?
That's the civil plans.
Yeah, so they're
It's
not-
not in this set, it's in They are called, I'm not sure what the document name is. Scroll up to the top, Gene. Street views, management, aerials. I don't. Ed,
You sure they're not the end of here?
unless you consolidated them, I don't know. We didn't submit them that way.
No. All right, so Monica's gonna have to find them.
We also have them on a we have them on a flash drive if that makes your life easier. Ed has it right there.
All right, so let me ask a couple of questions. We had talked about screening for neighbors.
Sure.
And I know there's, in the draft decision, there's some discussion of that. Can you just tell us what you guys are kind of
Sure.
willing to do, and if there's any thoughts on the draft
So-
decision?
We'll start just on the Sutton Pond side. We were asked to look at what we could possibly do between Building A and Sutton Pond. So the first thing we did was we moved the hedgerow that was previously on our side of the property line. And you can see it on this plan at the bottom there, which was previously on our side of the property line. We moved that onto the Sutton Pond side to extend their hedgerow that currently exists. There's a gap at the end, so we've extended that all the way to the corner, which allowed us to add additional trees on our side of the property line, which would be taller than that. So that was the first screening measure that we took there. As it relates to the High Street neighbors, we've got the arborvitae hedge already shown on the plans. That's always been there. And there's also a condition that I reviewed with Gene previously that would fund each abutter to fence or additional screening as they saw fit in their backyards.
Okay. And I saw two different variations of that. One where they got an estimate and they provided it to you and this cap. One where you just said, here's some money, do what you want in terms of screening.
We'd be open to discussing either option.
Okay. So I'd like to have that discussion here when we're going through the decision on that. Same thing, similar with Sutton Pond and the mitigation. There is a portion of the draft decision that talks about a one-time payment,
Yep.
and you were comfortable with that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Does anybody else have questions or things they want to see or ask now before we take public comment?
I'm gonna show the aerials of
Great.
the architecture.
And Ed, do you want to grab the podium and can talk? We're going to just go through your plans. Do you mind just doing a little overview?
Yeah, so this is the full set of revised architectural drawings, including on the cover here, rendering, or aerial rendering, showing the reduction to 4 stories. And then following this is a series of floor plans.
So that's internal with the apartments?
Yes,
Okay.
including the clubhouse. So this first elevation is of the single-story clubhouse. And as we've noted before, there's kind of a public side to the clubhouse and then a more back of house, if you will, to the clubhouse. So the more open, transparent side faces the pool, and then the more quiet side faces the abutting neighbors. As you can see, with very minimal openings towards that orientation.
And what's the material?
It is a combination of materials. Brick veneer, as we've talked about, to sort of be compatible, complementary to the mills and to the Sutton Pond condominiums. And then siding, probably in 2 forms, panel and horizontal claps.
Is that the same for the larger buildings too? or
Yeah,
just- okay.
yeah.
Okay, continue.
Keep scrolling down.
So this first series of elevations is of Building A. You can see a little key plan in the corner. Again, here's High Street for orientation along this axis. Building A, Building B, and then the single-story clubhouse that we just showed you. Up here is a key plan focusing in on Building A. So what we're showing here is the end elevation and then 2 on the inside corner. And again, you know, as we noted during the last hearing, it's basically the same architectural concept as we've described at prior hearings. It's, you know, brick ends, again, as I just noted, complementary, think, to the mills and to the Sutton Pond condominiums, and then a more residential texture in between. So that would include, as I noted, the horizontal siding, and then an accent along the base and then up into the balconies. So there's kind of these bookends, if you will, of brick and then a more residential texture in between. So this happens to show here the short end of the building right there facing High Street. And then again, it's really the same concept. This is the opposite side of Building A. So as Dave noted, balconies are oriented towards the parking lot. And then as you move towards High Street and towards the Granite Building, the balconies have been removed on this end. But again, same concept, kind of bookends of brick bracketing each end. This is Building B. So this building kind of has a slight variation, and that's because it has this bend in the building. We established this focal point, unlike Building A that has just the 2 ends of brick. Here we established this focal point as the main entry to the building, right here at this, what we call the knuckle of the building, or the bend in the building. So similar concept, but again, brick at each end, and then a focal point entry at the center. And all of this is oriented towards the interior pool courtyard. And then finally, this is showing the opposite end of Building B. Again, these elevations here, the longer elevations are oriented towards the wetland. And again, as Dave noted, here's the short end that is facing the High Street abutters, and that's that elevation. You can see, if you recall on a prior design, we did have a notch of a balcony towards the center. That shifted over to right at this location. It's in the same unit, but shifted around the corner, so now it's oriented towards the woods and the wetland.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions or comments about this? Dave, I wanted to ask, there was a comment at the last meeting, and I think some emails as well, about blasting and insurance and things along those lines. So can you talk about
Sure.
about that, please?
So I took a look at those emails. I spoke to our chief.
Okay.
Can I ask if you could just move the microphone
Oh, sure.
closer? I think some of the folks may be having a hard time hearing you, the people behind you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I spoke with the geotechnical engineer upon receiving those emails, and we also discussed this at the Conservation Commission hearing last time. So we don't expect any blasting on site. We haven't discovered any ledge on site that would require blasting. So therefore, we don't think that is a main concern. We will have a geotechnical engineer on site when we do the earthwork, and we've heard it characterized as a major earthwork operation. For us, this would be a typical earthwork operation. For example, we're building a building in Woburn right now that has actually deeper cuts or foundation or earthwork than this, and we have 2 buildings that are between, one's 20 feet away and one's 50 feet away, and we haven't had any issues with the earthwork contractor. The amount of soil that needs to be excavated for the foundations is between 2 and 7 feet, depending on where you are on site, and our geotechnical engineer has a lot of confidence that we should be able to do that without any damage to adjacent properties.
And are you aware of any ways to, like, how do they make sure that it's all going well, that they're, the vibrations and that the digging isn't having impacts as they're doing it?
Well, I think that they understand what the soil profile is on site. They understand how deep we have to dig to do it. They'll be on site monitoring the work. So based on what they know right now, they don't have any concerns about it. If when they're on site during construction, if they see anything that's different than what they've expected, then they could certainly, they would stop work. and changed the plan to make sure that we dealt with whatever potential situations there were.
And when you say they will be on site, are you referring to the geotechnical engineer?
Yes.
And could you just describe for folks, what is a geotechnical engineer and how does that address the concern here over potential vibrations or other problems associated with the excavation? What does that engineer bring to the issue?
Sure. A geotechnical engineer is someone who specializes in soil and also foundation design. So in those situations when the earth's removed, and as I said before, it's between 2 and 7 feet, it's not a major operation from that point of view. They would be on site, they have an engineer on site who monitors the work. I was mentioned in their potential condition, we certainly would be happy to add to the decision that a condition, the construction management plan that we proposed adding, that deals with some of the site-related logistics, to add in there that we would deal with, earth removal logistics and protection of adjacent buildings as a condition to our construction management plan. We would have our geotechnical engineer prepare something to that extent.
And who are you hiring the geotechnical engineer from?
The company we're using currently is Sanborn Head and Associates. We've used them on a number of
And
projects.
they're experienced in supervising excavation and soil removal in this area with the type of conditions that can be expected here? This is not new to them?
Absolutely.
Okay. And
They're experts.
I'm just asking these
Right.
questions because
No.
I think very valid questions were raised, and I want to make sure that we're trying to address that and doing it in a way that gives people a chance to understand, what these terms mean.
Right.
So
And-
I appreciate that.
No, absolutely. And I would just make one other comment is that, we'll, as I've said previously, and it may have been lost in the months that we've been talking about this, the construction management company that we're managing this is Avalon Bay. They're the same company as me. The people who manage this property are Avalon Bay. The neighbors will have our site superintendent's cell phone number, so if there's any concerns, they can always get in touch with him or her. And also, I'm certain that the inspector of buildings will be keeping a close eye on this project, and therefore, we feel like it's properly sort of mitigated.
And I know you've already said this, but if I could just ask you to elaborate it on a little bit and make sure I heard it correctly. I think you said that, in part because of the concerns that were raised, you were going to add some elements to the construction plan addressing the work of the geospatial engineer. Is that pretty much what you said?
What we'll do is, there's a condition, a draft condition about a construction management plan that talks about a whole host of things that need to be reviewed by the inspector of buildings prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Yep.
I'm just proposing we add to that something about, site work sequencing and protection of adjacent buildings as a
Okay.
condition to that construction management plan approval.
Great, and we can discuss that going through the decision
can.
as a condition.
Yep, and as
Great.
part, and just as a note, in addition to this geotechnical engineer, which is someone that they hire, reports to them, we also have in our draft decision, an independent construction monitor, as well as an independent environmental monitor. So the more levels of oversight we can have is good. So we're putting the right things in there. Which is good, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Gene, is there anything else you think is open? So, stormwater has been reviewed by our peer consultants. All questions, open topics have been addressed, correct?
All been addressed or conditioned
Or
within the
conditioned.
decision. And that applies for civil, traffic, stormwater, and all department review comments as well.
Okay.
We'll make a note that at the last meeting you asked that I reach out to the president of the Sutton Pond Condo Association. Bob Livingston is here. We did meet. We talked about some of the conditions that I was contemplating putting in the draft. They are in the draft. And so I don't know if you want to hear from Bob. So,
It's up to him. If he wants to come up, that'd be fine. That'd be great. Well, no, otherwise, anyone who wants to.
I think everything else that you have called out in terms of the vibrations and ledge has been discussed. So
Okay.
that's all I had is open.
Well, why don't we, for this one, while we're discussing the draft decision, I'd like to cast it so that people can
Yep.
at least see what we're talking about. I mean, some of the stuff is standard language, some is more specific to this, so that people have questions on that. But why don't we why don't we get, comment? What do you guys think? Do you want to go through the draft decision first or get comment first? And then, because we may get comment again, but which I'm okay with. I just don't, whatever's the best use of.
Well, I don't mind taking comments now. The only thing I'm gonna be concerned about is that we can't have like a discussion about every comment in the decision.
Right, no, I think I want to at least be able to describe the ones and then ones that are more,
Yeah.
I want to really.
I mean, I think we should walk through
Right.
much more thoroughly the decision than, you know, a
Right.
smaller decision, but,
Okay, so why don't we take public comment now? Like I said, we will go back and we're gonna be discussing the decision and potential conditions. Again, the way we do it is we go through the decision before we take a vote. So we could go through the decision and then still vote it down, we could vote for it, but the way we discuss the draft decision is if we're gonna vote for it, then these are the things that how we would condition it, and then we vote afterwards. That's just the practice and how we do it. So, to the extent that people wanna make comments, I'll invite people to make comments. Again, just, we have been talking about it for 7 months, so we get most of the concerns, but if there's more stuff that you wanna talk about, everyone is open, so. All right, anyone who wants to make public comment can do so now.
Hi, I'm Sally Fenimore, 90 High Street. Just a couple of comments. I know the email you guys were talking about was probably from me about the ground movement and things like that. So I appreciate the fact that you're willing to put something in there. But aside from adjacent buildings, if it could also include any other structures. We have a swimming pool and also a concrete basketball court. When I contacted our insurance company, they had suggested having somebody come out and do a whole analysis of our foundation before the project begins, and then again when it is complete. I'm wondering who would pay for that.
I don't think that's something that we can condition they pay for.
Okay.
Fair question.
Or possibly adding in different things to our insurance policy to cover any damage, but hopefully that would be covered by Avalon if there was something. One of the conditions that I don't know if it was brought up or not, but along the way, as this has all been addressed, you've been talking about there won't be a ton of kids in there, but there will be approximately 30 new students or something like that. So you can assume a third of those might go to the high school, and currently there are no sidewalks on Prescott Street for those students to walk on. And you've talked a lot about how there won't be traffic impacts, and it will be, again, a walking community, but the sidewalks on High Street, right in front of the parking lot, are not even sidewalks. They're not raised at all. And I'm hoping that there can be some condition that they can be working with the town to address the sidewalks, to improve the walkable conditions for people. And one final thing, and this is probably more conservation, but I was just looking at some of the conservation reports from what was going on with the Princeton properties and the runoff and all of that, and I'm wondering if that has been addressed as much as it needs to be addressed. And I apologize, I didn't go to the Conservation Committee meeting, but I thought I would at least bring it up, so.
Okay. We'll talk about that. I mean, we do have erosion control measures, so we can talk about that when we talk about those.
He also is very specific on the fill that they used. So part of that project, they used recycled concrete aggregate, and that's what's caused the oversight by the Conservation Commission. And this, we've restricted it, cannot be used. And actually, if you don't mind, you also jogged my memory on your request for a 8-foot fence. So I don't know if you've seen the draft decision. We've got 2 different options on fencing. But I will note that 8-foot then requires pulling building permits and possibly a structural analysis and things like that. So 6-foot and less is no building permit. So.
Hi, Barbara Sir, Sutton Pond. I was very glad to hear about all the work that's going to be done to, try to minimize damage to Sutton Pond or to the High Street neighborhood. But my question is, if there is damage, who pays for it? A lot of insurance companies don't cover ground movement, and if so, if something causes cracks in the building or foundation or whatever, insurance wouldn't cover it. So that's a big question.
Right, so I think you're right about that. I mean, I think it would, without giving legal advice, it would probably have to be you'd make a complaint to Avalon, and they'd review it, and you'd have someone review it and have to file potentially a lawsuit. I mean, that's, again, someone, I mean, that's with anything. If someone
Right.
does damage to your property, whether they drive a car into your property or they dig up a hole in their property and it affects you.
Right,
So-
okay.
So
And-
just in response to this question, can I ask if Avalon has had instances of surrounding properties damaged with your, I mean, you showed us a number of developments that you have done. So referring back to those, have there been examples of damage surrounding, in some manner of surrounding properties? And if so, what happened?
On the projects that I showed, there haven't been any instances of damage on any adjacent properties. So these properties are, from a geotechnical point of view and talking to my engineer, far away. I know it doesn't feel that way to the neighbors, but from
Right.
their perspective, when you start talking about 100, 200 feet away from an excavation, they feel like that's a very far distance. But that said, we'll address any of those in the construction management plan and have a plan from him that shows, what we would do and what would happen in case there was an issue.
So that'll be in the plan,
Okay,
what you would do and what would happen in case there was a problem.
all right. And my second question was, at the last meeting, toward the end of the meeting, we discussed elevation. And I did notice in one of the drawings, the elevation of the two buildings, but we don't have any comparison to Sutton Pond.
So we don't know what the elevation grade height of Sutton Pond is. We think that the current building is similar height, but based on the grade change, our building is a few feet taller. Just
Figured.
because, everyone knows Sutton
Thank
Pond's
you.
down.
Hey, guys. Bob Dufall, Sutton Pond. I still got a couple of questions. This engineer guy, they're hiring him. How many projects have you hired the same engineering firm? Be honest, how many?
How many times have I used the same geotechnical? Probably a dozen, and it's because he's very good.
Okay, now, do you have, as a town, are we gonna have a geoengineer that be on site to monitor his geoengineer?
We do not have a geo.
Well, then I think
Hold
we
on.
may have to do it.
If you ask a question, you gotta let me at least answer the
Well, you
question.
said, I don't think.
He's not done
Do
talking.
do we have a geotechnical engineer? No, not as far as I know. As far as I know, what we have is a independent construction monitor and an independent environmental monitor. Whether that construction monitor then needs to go and seek outside opinions, I'm not sure, but we have an independent construction monitor. We don't have a
Well,
specific.
an independent construction monitor is not an engineer, correct? Or is he just a typical?
Be a licensed,
Civil, it would be a
Contractor?
licensed civil engineer.
Builder?
I guess,
Civil engineer?
on the geotechnical point of view, what I would say is this is one instance where our interests are definitely aligned. I mean, the number one thing that I care about with the geotechnical engineer is that the ground is prepared appropriately so our buildings don't sink. And that's the reason we hire the same guy over and over again, is because we've had great success with the buildings that we've built and not having impacts on adjacent properties and not having impacts on the new investment that we're making. So they're more than qualified. They spoke at the Conservation Commission hearing last time about the test pit work. There were no follow-up questions from that, so.
Did they do any boring to see if there's any granite underneath any of the part of that parking lot? I didn't see any holes in the parking lot.
We've done
I mean,
enough,
you-
we've done, and we talked about this at the Conservation Commission, we've done foundation borings, and we've also done the test pits for the stormwater review. So we've done both of
and
those.
Sanborn is the engineer that provided they informed the whole stormwater review, and that was peer-reviewed by a civil engineer. And so Sanborn, the most latest submittal was a dewatering plan for the construction. So all that has been peer-reviewed. On site, we don't typically have a geotech engineer as peer review.
Do you remember any decisions where we've had one?
I don't.
I
I'm not aware
haven't
of
seen
any.
it. John, any? I don't
Well,
think we-
how many feet are you gonna put the pilings down on the ground?
We're not doing any blasting, we're not doing any piles. It's a shallow foundation, so just spread footings, and as I said before, it's between 2 and 7 feet, depending on where you are on site.
But we haven't, did you, has he, any soil recommendations? Is the soil gonna hold it?
that's why we have the geotechnical engineer. He does the soil analysis for the foundation. I mean, we certainly don't want to make a multi-million-dollar investment and have a problem with the foundation of the building.
Well, neither do we.
Okay. Anything else, Bob?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else? Good?
Good evening, Stephen Saraceno, 102 High Street. I'll try and be very brief this evening. I just still have a couple of concerns relative to the roadway, the proposed roadway, the private way. I know that there was some discussion about the truck movement, the truck diagram. I missed that. I didn't realize that we were on first. I thought you guys were on last tonight. So I understand that this is the diagram that was already discussed. Is that correct? This is the one that was uploaded on the website? Okay. And what's the length of the truck that's depicted in this?
50 foot?
The WB50,
Okay.
I believe it says it below left-hand corner of that, right-hand corner, WB 50.
Okay, so we're at 40 scale in this plan, right? Okay. Some of the comments that I'd like to make in regard to this plan, I had requested this morning that some videos and pictures be put on the website for tonight's discussion. They didn't make it, and it would help out my discussion a little bit more, but I took some time the other day to meet with a couple of the truck drivers that come in there on a regular basis. The particular truck that came in the other day, the cab alone was 53 feet long. He was making 2 stops. He was making one that's pretty much in the area that's shown in this picture. He was making another one that's close to the bay that's closer to High Street. I watched him for a good hour trying to maneuver around. The area is very tight for him. In the diagram, the way it's shown right now, it might be very possible for him to make that radius, but there are 4 bays there. So if he's in a bay that's closest to High Street, he's never making that turn. Even if he could make that turn, he said that the vehicle would tip because the 5th wheel follows the cab, and with the elevation coming up from that slope and making that turn, his stabilizers would hit the ground and the cab would fall over. So in order to make a successful turn out of this area, he had to pull into the parking lot, which will be Avalon's future parking lot, and make a circle around. He was also in the queue, waiting. Prior to his delivery, there was another truck making a delivery that also came in, also circled around. My biggest concerns is what's going to happen when this property goes in. How are these vehicles going to maneuver? I know this diagram isn't 100% accurate. I know for certain it's not, and I just don't want to be in a position later on where we're having trouble with our community behind us. I watched this particular truck the other day go to pull in to back in. He actually started to pull into their property, realizing there was no way through. So he backed out into the parking lot and then backed into the unloading spot. All the while, somebody was waiting to get out. Numerous people were waiting to get out, and numerous people were waiting to get in. I just see it as a concern. I don't have the answers. I just see it as a concern. And I know that there were some waivers that were given to the roadway. You know, we're supposed to be a 60-foot wide right-of-way. We reduced it or allowed the reduction down to 50, 26 feet of pavement versus 30. I just don't understand why we would give those waivers knowing that there is a potential problem and knowing that for the future as well as problems today. So just food for thought. The other thing that I'd like to get some further clarification on, and maybe it was already discussed and maybe it's somewhere in the plans, but I didn't see it, and that is one of the number of the things that one of the things that a number of the abutters have been commenting on are offsets. So I'd just like to get some clarification if the board could help me with offsets, building offsets, specifically a front offset. There's been some discussion about one of the buildings and its proximity to the private way, shown as I was just wondering what that offset is, if we determine the exact offset, the dimension.
Setbacks, I think you said.
The setback.
Okay, yeah, sorry. What the terminology. Okay, so just what the setbacks are?
I know on the Sutton Pond side, they're maintaining the 20 feet, but on the private way side, what are we maintaining?
Front yard setback, 5 feet.
5 feet?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe I'm misunderstanding something, so some clarification, but the dimensional table says front yard setback in the industrial 5 zone is 30 feet. Now, when you go to Sub-District A, which is where we are, there are additional things, but they're all relative to existing structures.
Let's pause.
Any new,
Pause.
sorry.
We reviewed this previously, and there's no front yard setback that was required on the subdivision road. That's why it's laid out the way it is. And the setbacks were, when we were pushing and pulling the buildings, to keep the 20 feet for Sutton Pond and to give additional buffer behind Mr. Saraceno's house.
All right, so Gene, setbacks to the adjacent property, is that right?
Yes, the bylaw, the zone requires side and rear setbacks. It does not require a front setback. We wanted the buildings on the street. We envisioned them on High Street, but like the downtown overlay, I don't know offhand what it is, but the front setback is not far off the street line.
There's just some ambiguity in the bylaw, so I wanted some further clarification. In one area, it does specifically say, in Sub-District A, which is where we are, buildings and structures in existence as of the date of the adoption of Part 2 shall include a minimum front setback, side yard setback, and rear setback set at 0.
Right.
That I
For
understand.
existing buildings.
For existing buildings.
And then it goes on to specify any new building,
Correct.
alteration, or extension of an.
And it doesn't define a front yard setback.
Exactly.
So I went back to the table for the industrial area, because I didn't know where else to go.
So they filed under that downtown overlay.
Okay?
Special permit, so they're operating within the historic mill area, which is section 18 of our bylaw.
Which specifies what is an offset.
None,
None,
no front yard
no
setback.
front yard setback.
Okay.
For new buildings, and it's 0 setback for existing
Okay,
buildings.
so they're complying with the setbacks
Yep.
in the downtown overlay district in one area and Sub-District A for others.
No, sub-district A for all, so they're within the downtown overlay, sub-district A in the bylaw. And I don't have it in front of me, but there's language at the beginning that if you opt to file under that provision, then that's the bylaw you're operating under.
Correct, which would be Sub-District A.
Yep,
And Sub-District A does not define a front yard setback for a new building.
right.
So then what would it be?
No,
If it doesn't define it, I'm
It means-
confused.
It means it's 0. It means it's 0.
Well, it doesn't mean that. This is very specific, and that's, there's ambiguity there.
There's
It
not.
does not, it says existing structures is 0.
It's
New structures, it gives a side and a rear, it doesn't say
Right, so when
front.
it doesn't give you a setback, that means there isn't any. There's no required setback. They mean,
Oh.
they mean, that's just how the bylaw works.
All right, well, that's the first time I've ever seen that in a bylaw. I'll remember that, okay. All right. Somebody previously mentioned about elevations of buildings. I think we should know the elevation of Sutton Pond versus the new buildings. A surveyor can easily shoot that, so we can see what the difference is between the two buildings. We did determine that they're possibly a couple of feet, but it'd be nice to know exactly what it is. The other thing is that on the plan, there is standing water in the back of the property at elevation 85. It's on the wetland side. Not too far away from there is where they did the borings, and then the estimated groundwater goes down, was it 73.5 or something like that? I'm just wondering what we're gonna do if there isn't that much of a change in water. We're doing some sort of dewatering at the same time, is that what's gonna happen? If you're putting in shallow foundations, you get dewatering provisions and stuff for hitting groundwater?
There was a dewatering plan that was submitted to this board as well as the Conservation Commission, and the geotechnical engineer talked about it at the last Conservation Commission hearing because it was a big point of contention with them.
Okay. The other thing that was discussed at the last meeting, and maybe I missed it here tonight, but what are we doing for temporary roadways for people to pass while the construction's going on?
That's all in one of the conditions for the construction management plan, is that when the contractor goes through and plans the site, is to make sure that we have access to the loading dock and access to Sutton Pond all the time.
And that needs to be submitted to the building commissioner and the fire department, as well as copied to planning.
Okay. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your points. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Kim Pass, 110 High Street. Back to the vibrations. My concern is not really with the vibrations with the construction on the property, But hauling all that equipment down High Street, or all the materials on the 18-wheelers that are gonna be going 20 feet from my foundation. That's really my concern, is getting the materials to the site from either Prescott or High Street. Either way, there's gonna be excess, more than the normal. I mean, there's already a lot. Houses already shake, things fall off the shelves. And we're just gonna add that for about 2 years? Just throwing it out there as a concern. And that's all I have on that. Oh, actually, I have one other thing. On sheet C102, there's a modular retaining wall, and I'm wondering what that is and how high it is. I hadn't seen that on some of the other plans, like in this early fall.
Behind your property, Kim?
Yeah,
behind
it looked like it was kind of right on there.
What it is your property's higher than ours, so we
Right.
have to have a retaining wall so that that emergency access road is lower than your property. So
Okay.
it's a retaining wall. I don't know the height, I can look at the height, but it's, your site's higher, so that retaining wall faces our site,
Okay.
our side.
Is it, is it something like 2 feet, 8 feet? I'm
If you
just,
give me a second, I can take a
just
look.
curious.
Yep, no.
Kim, you have like a drop-off from your property right onto theirs, or does it go all the way down? Do you have a wall there already?
We
or
don't
can-
have a wall there, no.
It just goes all the way down to the
It's sort
fence?
of gradual, yeah,
Okay.
it's a gradual kind of
All right,
segue right down into the parking lot that's currently there.
okay.
I think along that property line, the highest it is 5 feet. Like I said, you're the high side, so that wall faces, it was required to get that truck turning for the fire truck in. And then it goes down and peters out to zero.
Oh, so the retaining wall itself is sloped, or you're talking about the
No,
property? The land.
the retaining wall will slope, so it'll be high. If you look on, it was 103, there's top of wall and bottom of wall elevations on everything, so 5 feet at the corner, and then it goes down to 2 feet behind our clubhouse.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay,
that's all I
thanks.
had.
No, good question,
And-
thank you.
And there's provisions in the decision that a structural engineer needs to certify that work as well, so,
Oh,
the retaining wall. Yep.
How high can the wall be? I mean, is there regulation between properties, how high the wall can be?
That's one meeting.
Jill Barker, 181 High Street. So it sounds like we're crossing the Ts, dotting the Is. And I printed out the agenda tonight, and I'm reading 3 separate 4- and 5-story buildings.
That's the initial application, so that's
Mhm,
not what
and
that's not what's being voted on.
Uh-huh. And what happened to the general consensus that the board had made back in November, that they agreed with basically the general public that limiting it to 3 floors was really the most reasonable plan for this project? We're talking 4.
No.
Stress the 3, wasn't I? Everybody
No,
else was on
I
board with
listened to every
4.
person because I wanted to make sure I heard
So
what people had to say.
I think I think everyone has to kind of give their own answer on that.
Well,
But I
well,
think, hold on,
and-
but I think it's a fair question. So I can tell you, at least from my perspective, what happened is that the meeting that you're talking about, most of the members of the board said that their preference was for 3 stories
Right.
and 150 units.
Right.
And took
And that seemed to
hold on, let me try to answer your question, then you have
Alright.
more questions.
All right.
So, Avalon took that, they considered it and said, no, we really think that we need 200. And I think David from RCG came and presented some information about that. And then I think each of us, at least for me, I had to ask myself, is sticking at this 150, is that the right thing? Is that legally supportable versus 200 versus some other number? Or is there some other number in between that I think everyone could that I could satisfy myself is okay, and that Avalon would agree to, rather than taking a risk of, if this is shot down, either they don't agree to it and appeal, or if we don't allow this special permit, whether or not they could do something else by right that I think would be worse or more dense, or.
We don't know, but,
So that was, at least in my mind, the thinking, and I had been okay with 4 stories, so then that's why I had a subsequent meeting, I asked, okay, at 4 stories, how many units is it? And it was 170, and that's how at least I got comfortable with the 170 number. That's for me. I mean, if anyone else wants to discuss this.
And what was
now-
Avalon's major reasoning behind this? I just wanted to know what was clear, why the 3 stories just wasn't going to meet their expectations, when it's apparent that that's larger than we should probably even have
Not sure about So,
in this space where this is located. I'm just curious, I mean, I can see you've gone through that thought process with, but what was their,
I didn't get a rationale from them. I guess we can ask them at the end, but
it just seems like,
they wanted 250. I mean, so.
yeah.
Just telling you what they wanted.
But they could have wanted 10 stories, I don't know.
Right.
I'm just saying that we're trying to,
Well, I'll let them decide if they want to answer that after we talk. Okay. Does anyone else want to to discuss their thought process, or save that for later? Save it for later?
I thought you said it very well.
Okay. I mean, I think that, I don't want to speak for anyone. That's my thought of how it came to be. I think everyone kind of, that's how it was.
I just feel like you kind of took all our concerns and our comments. You know, you made good deliberations. You came back with agreeing on the 3 floors, and yet here we are, and we're 4 floors. It's a big difference. It's a huge difference. I guess I'm just want to know why Avalon didn't think that that decision by our planning board merited their more serious consideration.
So I just have
Is
to
it just
say-
financial aspect to this, or is there, I mean, I guess that's what it is.
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just
Yeah,
ask a question?
yeah.
What I heard you just say was the planning board's decision for 3 stories. I think I heard you say that, and that was not the case.
It was not a decision, it was kind of a consensus that sounded like that was the,
I just think
Right.
that the terminology we use here is important.
Totally.
So when I thought I heard you say that, I just wanted to ask about
That's
it
fine.
because I don't think it's an accurate reflection of that meeting. It was not a planning board decision
it
for
was not a
3
decision, but
stories.
it was definitely a declaration that this was what you supported, or at least this is what you thought would be the best floor level plan. I mean, I did pay very close
Yeah.
attention, and.
I think it's fair to
And
say.
that is probably, I mean, obviously, it must have been how you felt.
Yeah,
but-
I think at that time, that was a consensus of the board that would be what was preferable. But everything was still kind of in flux. I won't say, it's not a negotiation, but we told them what we would like to see. They said what they would be willing to do. And we haven't even voted yet. We have to decide whether or
Okay.
not 170 versus, and 4 stories versus 3 stories,
Yeah,
and
I
what the
think-
associated risks of our decision become, one way or the other.
And I can't, I think I recall maybe the 3 stories was closer to the 150 apartment level or something like that, which is,
Yeah.
as I said, still significant.
Yep.
But that's kind of what I wanted to say, because I know others keep wondering
Yeah.
why we're doing
no.
4 stories. You know, we want this project to work, and we want it to be a healthy situation, and 4 stories seems too big.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jill. Is there anything you,
I guess it would just be the similar comments as I had said before, which is that the reason we need the special permit is because it's multifamily, that we're half the allowable FAR, we're less than 0.5, and the allowable FAR is is 1 under existing zoning. And if this was an office building or another use, we wouldn't need a special permit at all. And we're within all the bulk and dimensional requirements as in the overlay.
Can I just ask you,
Sure,
similar to what I did before?
sure.
You just said something that I think is very important to inform this question, and that is the FAR
Sure.
and the allowable. That's all appropriate
Sure.
and accurate, but it's jargon.
Oh, sure.
Can you explain what that means in terms of just exactly what you said, but instead of in the jargon,
Sure.
what does it mean?
So FAR
Could
is.
you speak up?
Sure. The FAR is under zoning, the allowable square footage on a particular site. And this site is over 9.5 acres.
And FAR says a floor area ratio.
Floor area ratio. And the allowable FAR for this site, floor area ratio for this site is 1 square foot per area square foot. And we are currently building less than 0.5, so less than half of the allowable FAR of what this could be if it was something else.
Are wetlands factored into that at all?
No.
What's considered buildable area? No.
Wetlands account for the land, count in the land area denominator.
And just to clarify one, on that response, so a special permit wouldn't be needed under the definitive master plan, but a site plan review special permit would still need to be obtained for a building construction of greater than 2,000 square feet. But, so,
But it's a less stringent standard.
So does that mean that you're essentially agreed to build something that is half the size of what you could build?
The way I would say it is that when we had a 250-unit plan, that we met all of the bulk and dimensional requirements of the plan, of the zoning bylaw, and now we're at a 170-unit plan, which is a lot less dense. And the 55 feet is as of right under the zoning bylaw. That's the allowable max. We're at 46 feet now.
I assume the potential financials you would have said would have been more beneficial at 250 units or 200?
As I said at the last hearing, going to 170 is not great for Avalon, and it's certainly not great for RCG either. I think David Steinberg spoke to that last time when we were all here and talked about, the years of planning that had gone into this site and being where it is today, it being identified in the master plan as a 200-unit apartment site,
But generally, there's a formula, or not a formula, but the more apartments to a degree, you
Generally,
expect
yes.
generally more
Yes.
profits. Okay.
Yes.
Fair, that's fine. Hi. Betsy?
Points.
Okay. Just speak, get a little closer.
Betsy Cody, 116 High Street.
Thanks,
High
Betsy.
Street's all divots. That's why when the trucks go by now, like they say, everything shakes my house too. So we really do need to either repaved or something because it's been dug up a million times. Also, if you look at the plans, everything comes over to my side of High Street. If you look in the High Street really goes 3 feet more on the other side, but it has never been built on. So it's just something to think about. You could widen High Street.
Do we have, do you know if we have a sidewalk plan, there is a paving plan, right?
the DPW operates a paving plan. I think it's a 5-year plan, and it's posted on the website. I don't know where.
It's just that every time we repave High Street, it raises it up, and it comes up higher and higher, like the sidewalk, there is no difference. I mean,
So-
even the police speed on
Yeah.
High Street, I mean, everybody speeds on High Street.
No curb.
But there's no curbing. And I have a grandchild now, I want to walk her, well, I don't feel safe because cars are parked blocking the sidewalk, I'm walking the street, I almost got killed.
So,
But what we really need is to have the street
Yeah.
looked at and paved.
I know DPW used to come in prior to town meeting to show their capital budget, including the street thing. I think that's an appropriate kind of thing to bring up. I mean, it's a broader public policy issue.
Yeah.
We don't have full responsibility for it. In fact, we have extremely limited responsibility for it, but it's a very legitimate question. I think it's very fair, and it's something that if we can nudge it along, that we pay more attention to High Street. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the intersection out to Sutton Street, how that can be cleaned up pretty easily to prevent a lot of the accidents. Maybe let's push a little bit. Let's put them on the spot.
So, yeah, I mean, to Betsy and to Kim's point earlier, I mean, I think it's not as essential right now, but if this gets approved and if they start building and moving those trucks in, I think it really would be a good time to, one, see where this street is on the paving plan and potentially move it up. If you're gonna make it worse with trucks, you may want to pave it sooner rather than later, if it's 3 years from now, if it's 1 year from now, but to do it in time with the construction. So, I mean, I don't think we really can't condition things
No, I'm
too much
saying that-
outside, but
that's really our
yeah.
biggest concern is,
Yeah.
I'm telling you now, just the trucks going up and down the restaurants, my,
Yeah, it's a good point.
shaking off the walls. I've been there my whole lifetime, for 10 years I lived alone. And one other thing too, how do we get, half the problem in this town is we don't have enough affordable housing. We're not at the 10%. How do we make mandated that any new developer coming in put in 10%? So we're not going to be blackmailed anymore to, accept something because we don't have the 10%.
Yeah.
I mean, if we have, and I think for the town's sake too, we should have it because, for moral reasons.
So.
So how do we
Yep,
get this?
so it's somewhat outside of this, but I agree with you very much. That's why we were trying to do there are a lot of different ways to do it. We were talking about, a few months ago, talking about an inclusionary zoning bylaw, which would require just that if you build a certain amount of units. It's just been difficult to take on those kind of big projects of creating something zoning like that while we're dealing with a lot of this. I did read that, I think in the budget proposal, that there is a part-time employee to study affordable housing and to, I think, really help with exactly that question, whether it's an inclusionary zoning bylaw, whether it's, more funding to our housing trust. There are a couple different ways to go about it, and I think if we get someone that actually, the two things we need is someone to look at it and someone to manage it, right? Those are the two things, and so I definitely want to go into town meeting and potentially voting on that issue about hiring someone to really look at that, because I think you're right on.
Because, I mean, some point, you people are pushing things on us that we don't want because we don't meet the affordable housing.
I agree. So this one isn't affordable, but I think, yeah.
Another thing too,
Yeah.
just off the track here, I saw the other side of the street, stuff's
Which
coming up.
we'll talk about later, yeah.
And are we gonna talk numbers at this one?
I don't think yet. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see what they say. We'll see what they say.
Okay, thank you.
I haven't heard numbers yet, so.
I have one more question.
Sure.
We keep going back to the 9 acres that are over there, and every time we say something to him, and he says he's gonna take his ball and go home because they can build a big industrial building over there. So what kind of square footage can you build over there that's gonna take parking, trucking, and services? It's not gonna happen, and you know that as well as I know that. There's not enough room. So this is your ball game, that's all it is. So to threaten you guys like you did a couple other times, that we're gonna go back, no, you call them out on it.
I don't think,
So that's, so I mean, there's not enough room over there to make a big industrial building over there with the accommodations to have Aetna, BYN Mellon, a small Raytheon, or a small hospital. It's not gonna happen. There's not enough room. So I think that should be out of the equation altogether, because that's not what's capable of it. In this building, this project is too big for that area, and you know it as well as I do. Thank you very much.
anyone else? Okay. All right, so we are going to, was there someone? Yes?
Are you talking about the high building off of High Street?
Which,
No, not yet.
we're not talking 21 High Street?
Well, the apartments they're proposing.
Which ones? Right now, we're talking about 4 High Street, which is the Avalon apartment project. Okay? Now's the last chance, so.
I live on Stacy
Hold on,
Drive.
can you tell us who you are, please?
Marjorie McLean.
Yeah.
I've lived here since 2011, and I think it's much too big of a project to put on a very small street. I think traffic will be terrible. You change the whole face of your downtown by putting a big bunch of apartments. It's one thing to have them on 125 or off of 114, majorly busy roads. This road is a small little 2-lane road. I live next to the nursing home on Stacy Drive. I see buses now. I see who's ever got parking over here, busing all those people over to Merrimack College. I just think it's a shame to take away from your downtown by putting a big bunch of apartments like that. You're going to have people going in and out, you know, moving things. You're going to have constant traffic. And I just think it's not a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Okay, all right, so why don't we review the decision and go from there. Okay, so I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not the building numbers. Okay. What time is it? Okay, so we have a 170 unit residential market rate rental community, 15 studio, 65 one bedroom, 82 two bedrooms, 8 3 bedroom units, 2 buildings, clubhouse. That's on the front page. Findings of fact, the initial findings of fact talk about the different permits that have been granted in the past in this area, in this particular parcel and district. 1 through 10 all are history. 11 is the special. Yes. 11 is the special permit criteria. So we need to decide what the specific site is appropriate location for such a use, structure, or condition. So it notes that the site is in a mixed-use area. It's anticipated residential development. The site will support the adjacent retail, commercial, and office uses. It notes that the master plan had envisioned, or it was noted in the master plan of a possibility for 200 residential units in this particular site, as well as other apartments in this area.
Just a comment
Yep.
that some of the references are still to 200 units in this project versus 170, so. in
Where?
11C and 11D.
So 11C is because the traffic was
Right.
reviewed at 200 units. It was not repair reviewed at 170 because it continued to go down.
Oh, okay.
So the traffic data we have is based on 200 units, and we did have the traffic engineer.
Can we clarify that? Because
Yeah.
I am worried that somebody might sort of come to the same thing and say, no, it's 170. I mean, it's just, you know, if anything, what
I'll
it
say
does
it's
is
been
if
further
it
reduced
passed
to-
muster at 200, then at 170, it can only be better, but fair
Okay.
enough.
So the project plans and a traffic study were submitted and revised based on reduction in units to 200 units. The current proposal, or this permit, allows for 170 units.
Yep.
Just as a clarifying sentence. Okay, D, again, the D talks about the fiscal impact analysis that was done at 250 and 200. Was not redone at 170,
Right.
correct?
So same comment.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the same comment, add the same comment. So again, the report shows a positive fiscal impact to the town of 383,500. We can expect that number would decrease. But I believe from the data, proportionally, right?
Yeah.
Correct. And I'm looking at page 6. Yeah, go ahead, please.
E, the, in harmony with the general purpose intent of the bylaw.
Yep.
The project encourages an appropriate and less intense use of the land than is allowed by right. What by right use of the land would be more intense than 170
Yep. Fair question.
apartment units?
I can pull up the chart again. You would expect that a commercial building such as what's in the mills right now would actually, at 4 or 5 stories, would be more intense. The apartments, as the traffic patterns, the data that we were provided, it's more spread out throughout the day and it's more coming and going, whereas the commercial and retail is more consistent throughout the day. So I think generally, it's generally considered that commercial and retail is more intense in terms of the number, like, if you look at how many actual people are gonna be there in and out during the day. I don't know if we wanna
Yeah, I feel like
clarify
that's
as
sort of
intense.
a subjective description of what intense means.
So I think we have some data on that too. So when Princeton Properties went in, it was described to us as it's 192 market rate units with 43,000 square feet of commercial. And what the abutters in that development wanted was a traffic light on 125.
Right.
And what actually tripped or triggered the warrant for a traffic light was the commercial component of that.
Right.
192 on their own wouldn't have triggered the state Mass DOT to require a light at that site. So that kind of speaks to the intensity of the commercial use. On only 43,000 square feet of commercial use is what actually brought the intensity to warrant a light.
Okay, so we're just mostly talking about trips in and out.
Yeah,
to the-
exactly.
Is what intensity
Yeah, but
means.
also the floor area ratio.
And the floor
I
area
mean, that's the other one. I mean,
Okay.
as we said, the floor area ratio, even for residential, is half what it could be, and for commercial, it could be double too.
Right, but that's based on the entire lot. Realistically, wetlands aren't going away if you build a commercial building versus a residential, so I don't think you get significantly larger floor area ratio other than going up another story.
Or you
correct?
could get more than 0.5.
Right, well, I mean, you fill in the pool, you fill in some of those parts. I mean, it could be
Yeah,
more, but I
right,
I
but
agree,
it's
it's not gonna
like-
be the whole thing.
You're right,
Right.
at some point, it's a diminishing return, but it's,
Okay,
yeah.
just
Yep.
But you're,
Food for
a fair
thought.
point, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the things that we have to define, and intense is not defined, I don't think. You know, it is somewhat, it is subjective.
So are you asking for more descriptor there, or you?
No, I mean, that,
Discussion.
I'm just raising a flag as to what I'm seeing is,
I mean, those are the
And-
words from the bylaw, so I think we need to
Right.
use them. It's a question whether you agree or not agree.
right, yeah, I just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not defined, and I think it's a subjective standard, rather, more than objective.
Agree, that's what I was saying, definition of intense.
So do you have a?
I mean, maybe
resolution
what
for
you
that?
could say is that it's a lesser density, because density is quantifiable, and it's you know,
Well, but I think we have to use the word intense there, because that's in the bylaw of what we
Oh,
need to
okay.
find.
No, so
No,
the
it's not?
bylaw is what's up top, the use of harmony.
Oh, I see,
And the rest
okay.
is kind of justifying. So all
I
of
see,
this is
okay,
suggested
all right.
language to you. It's not.
Okay, so then we can change that.
Yes.
Or maybe something to the effect that the project is a more comparative use to the existing use within the neighborhood. It's generally with Sutton Pond condominiums and High Street, Prescott Street, you have residential,
We could also,
instead of industrial.
we could also say a less intense use of the land than some of what is allowed by right, because some of what is allowed by right would be less intense. You know, I mean, if it's a giant car wash, or if it's versus if it's municipal, I mean, there are ones that are different, so we could say that is less intense than,
Six or less dwelling units.
right, then,
Certainly less
right,
intense.
right, so an appropriate and less intense use of the land than some of what is allowed by right, would that be better, or, I mean, we can just, or,
Yeah, I mean, if it's not, it's more of a point for discussion than.
oh, okay, so if you're, okay, that's fine. All right.
But if we're gonna vote on this tonight, then this really should be cleaned up.
Right, well, as of now, no amendment has been suggested, so
okay.
that's fine. If someone wants to make a motion to amend it, they can.
Six.
Yes, please. Could we add in 6B about the relocation of the balconies?
Yep.
And the,
Or reduction.
the reduction. You didn't relocate anybody, you just reduced the number, right?
The ones on High Street, I think, were.
Or shifted, is it?
We moved some, and I think we reduced one.
Okay, so reduction and relocation.
And Gene, under paragraph C, all of these bullet points, those are listed within the bylaw for the purpose of
Yep.
sub-district A?
Yes. Again, the first sentence is what's listed, and then supportive language to support it.
So the bullet points are supportive, not necessarily,
The first sentence, encourage a diverse mix of residential, business,
Oh,
commercial,
okay.
office, government.
understood, okay, got you.
And then it's, I further explain, currently there are 66 residential units, that's my language.
And just to make sure that's consistent throughout each one, first sentence,
Yep.
bylaw, the rest,
Yep.
supportive.
And I believe the requirement is only to meet one or two.
So when people get to,
Yeah, one or more of the purposes is the requirement, and so I just detailed all of them, but
when people get to special conditions, starting at 34, I'd like to walk through a couple of those in more detail, just when you get there. If you have comments before that, just say so.
So, when we talked about pushing the point about the road, about High Street, could that be an additional bullet under 21? Or 22?
It just hasn't, those are findings of fact, that it hasn't,
Right.
but it hasn't happened yet.
Right, okay.
right, so 21 has happened in that that will be conditioned. And then as far as working, presenting to the Board of Selectmen roadway improvements, that has happened, and then in the spring of 20, those are anticipated to move forward.
People ready? Okay, so 34, no later than 30 days after issuance of building permit for the project, the applicant shall pay to the Sutton Pond Condominium Associated $25,000 to defray the cost of installation of gates or other mitigation measures deemed as necessary by the condominium. And then it goes on from there. I understand the applicant is comfortable with that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that, and I think it's best for them, for Avalon to give them money to Sutton Pond and let them decide what's best for them and at what time period, right? Because they may want to see the project as it's developing and decide to put in, they may want to put things in early. So I think it's something that I'm comfortable with, and I like the way that it's done.
Is this something that you would discuss with the president of the association?
At the time, I discussed this is being considered as I was drafting it, that I would likely have language to this effect. So I don't know that he's seen the draft decision. It was online and in the packet today, but.
On 35, applicants shall fund the amount necessary for the property owners of the properties at 90, 102 to 104, 108 to 110, 116 to 118 High Street, 36 Purley Road, for the property owners to install fencing, landscaping, screening, or other buffering of their property. And there are two ways to go about it. One is suggested that the property owners get reimbursed, provide receipts and get reimbursed. The other, the second one, is that Avalon simply gives them the listed money and they make their own arrangements from there.
So in that one, I modeled it after the Sutton Pond condominium. It seemed more executable for everybody on both sides. However, I just provided the board another option. I spoke with David, and I think you indicated either way is okay.
Is that on a case-by-case or house-by-house basis, or is it all one or the other?
I think one or the other is appropriate.
One or the other. And
That's how
so
it's
if we
envisioned.
take the second one, basically, after the issuance of the building permit to the listed addresses, you guys just write a check and they figure out their own situation. They put up what they want, don't put up what they want, it's on them.
And at the last meeting, you indicated, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I'm sorry, in the
Well,
packet,
it's just-
there's kind of supporting material as to how I selected those addresses.
Yeah.
They were the least amount of buffering at those locations. Some of them are just really, really close with little buffering. The Purley Way is pretty big distance, but there's just nothing behind that house, so that's how I selected it, and the details in the packet tonight.
Okay.
So I may be jumping out a little bit here. I like this condition. I think it's a good idea and it's very proactive. But I'm wondering, normally we put in general screening condition in our agreements, and then we have a look-back period where if the screening is not sufficient or if it dies, they have to replace it. Do we have that?
I have it still in perpetuity, so.
Okay, good,
According
okay.
to the planting plan.
Yeah.
So that's in the general conditions, I believe, the first one.
Okay,
So
good,
you'll get to
okay.
the last page or so.
Okay.
So do people have a preference? My preference would be the second, the latter, just give the check and let them deal with it rather than reimbursements and things like that.
That's fine.
Do any of the neighbors have a particular position yet? Yep, okay. So what this says is for properties at 102 to 104, 108 to 110, 116 to 118 High Street, and 36 Purley Street, that 30 days after the issuance of a building permit, so this is kind of midway through the, or somewhat through the process where they say, okay, we will now want to start building, 30 days after they get that permit, so before they put anything into the ground, well, 30 days after they get that permit, they come to these addresses and say, here's for those 102, 104, 108, 110, 116, 118 High Street, and 36 Purley Street, here's $5,000, you can use it for your screening, you can use it for whatever you want, the purpose is screening, you get to decide what you want to do with it. And 90 High Street, I assume has more, either
Yes,
longer
the-
fence line or
yeah.
more
I think it was
required?
185 feet there,
Okay.
so it was
7,500.
significantly more than the others. And I have to note, Eitan, the addresses, I omitted 90, so I will insert 90 before 102. The first-
Okay.
The first condition has it, I just omitted
Okay.
typing that, so.
So, one option, so we wanted to make sure that the screening is appropriate. So and we had talked about putting fencing and things like that. So one way that we can do that is have it done and then you provide receipts and things like that. Another way is have Avalon do it and make one fence. Or the third. So yeah. So, No, so it says after 8 foot, if for 8 foot, you have to get a building permit, that's what was said. Yep, so, right, so, so up to the $5,000. Yeah, so up to the 5,000. So, I mean. How is this our headache, though? It's that. Well, that. So we're actually trying to avoid, hold on, trying to let, hold on. Right.
Whoever that is should, Eitan, she should.
Yeah,
say
hold on,
who
you gotta
she
come
is.
up here,
I
you gotta
don't-
come up here and talk. Okay,
Okay,
well,
then-
you're not, so.
I don't know that person.
So the purpose of this discussion is to try to find what way we can do it. It seems to me easiest to be able to give the neighbors a check, because the more uniform we can be, the better. If one person wants to do it one way and one person wants to do it a different way, it makes it very difficult to enforce if there's a problem.
Well, hi Betsy Cody. Well,
Yeah.
so far, Kim, Shannon and I, we all agree, we'd rather have Avalon do it, so it'd be uniform, plus I'm not gonna go and pay a surveyor to come out and do my property lines again. Because, I just think it'd be better if they did it, because then it would all be uniform. Would all look the same.
Okay.
Do you agree, Shannon? Shannon agrees, and I know that
Hold
Kim
on.
had said, because otherwise, I don't, I hire everything out now, I don't do anything anymore, and I just,
Okay, hold on. What do you,
So, the issue with working on other people's property is that you need an access agreement, you need a whole bunch of other legal agreements. I can't just go on someone's land and plant, and put a fence in. So the thought here was, some people may want to put a fence, and some people may see the project and say, you know what, I'd rather have 3 nice trees, and I'll spend my $5,000 on 3 nice trees instead of a fence. And that, we think we have ample screening on our side of the property line, so that, it's going to take away a majority of the impact. This is an additional consideration for folks to be able to put a fence up if they wanted to, or plant a tree if they wanted to. And we thought it gave people more optionality to just get a check from us, or to get reimbursed for doing whatever they want, versus having to coordinate all the neighbors to agree on a fence, and then get access agreements from every single neighbor to do that work, and then go and perform the work.
okay,
all right, so you just kind of checks that.
okay.
One more thing. Well, my president of the condo committee has already agreed to $25,000. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I understand it, that's a private road that goes down through into who's going to be Avalon, correct?
Which, I'm sorry, from High Street?
From Main Street. Supposedly that's a private road.
The current road.
The current road. Our current road that goes through our development, then into Avalon, and we have an easement.
Yes.
What is the town gonna do when we block that road off? Has anybody even thought about that? Because that is an access road that people cut through all the time.
It's your private property, you guys.
Yeah, but it's been private property for 100 years. It's been an access road for 100 years. There's all kinds of laws with easements and everything else like we got going through here. So throwing $25,000 at it, then what's to say that the public walking is going through our parking lot? And there's gonna be a lot more traffic going uptown, because if we're trying to generate more business for the uptown area. With 170 units, who's gonna be cutting through Sutton Pond? Can they guarantee that they will not let people cut through Sutton Pond?
Walking or driving?
Walking and driving.
Well, I don't know that we can control walking, driving. We do have a condition in here that is part of their leases that tenants will agree that their access is through High Street, not
Yeah,
Main
but
Street.
that's an agreement, right? That's.
This is all an agreement. I mean,
Yeah,
this is
so
a permit.
So flip a coin and the guy comes down to
This is,
100 miles an hour.
this is a permit. This is what we're allowing them to do. If there are issues with the permit, then there are remedies. So, I mean, it's all paper, it's all paper.
Well, you're voting on something that's just almost hearsay, right? I mean, we're all, we're getting through all this stuff, and it's like, you're going through everything, and it's like, well, if they do this, they do this, do this. I mean, has conservation even given the okay to do?
Conservation comes after our.
Right, but aren't we putting the horse in front of, the cart in front of the horse when we
No.
don't do conservation first?
No, we're not.
That's not how it works? So
No.
you give a permit to build, and then conservation says no, then what happens?
Then they have to come back to us.
Okay.
All right. Applicant shall include in the lease agreement tenants access to the property via High Street, not via Main Street.
Hey, just one comment on the second half of 35, which
Yes.
is here. Steve and I were just looking at it, we think this actually is written correctly, Gene, because I think you say the first series of them are for 5,000 and 90s
90
for
is for
7,500, so I think you got it right.
I just didn't have the address number 90 at the beginning, before 102, 104.
You don't need it because you say it after the and, because they're getting a different amount than the others.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. I think you have it right.
You got it right.
Okay, sorry.
You're right.
Sorry.
I think you have it.
Thank you.
I think you actually
got
have it right. I agree.
It's nice to be able to say sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So 43, we have the applicant conduct a traffic monitoring program approximately 1 year after the first certificate of occupancy. And then we get to review that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, and the gentleman did raise that point, and I think and maybe we could even expand it to addressing the trucks coming in, and parking into the roadway. I mean, it should be pretty broad, pretty robust. I mean, I think that we should do it, I do it for 2 years rather than one, but I'd also say that to the extent that it is a 50-foot right-of-way and they want to put some parking on the street, what we may decide is that you can't put any parking on the street. So I think we ought to, I think this is a really important condition, and it addresses one of the key issues that was raised tonight that I took away as a legitimate issue.
So 2 years, I think that's fine. But this is after the first certificate of occupancy. So I think the concern with the trucks, well, there are two different trucks, right? There's the trucks coming in, making deliveries. We could deal with that. We wouldn't deal with the trucks coming down as part of construction.
No, I'm not
Okay.
talking about
You're talking about
construction
the-
piece. I'm
the
just talking
trucks
about
with
the,
the-
yeah,
okay.
because I think that impacts the use of the road in future.
Okay, so I think we should add something about that. Because this says it's gonna compare it to the traffic analysis, which really didn't talk about that. So, traffic monitoring program approximately 1 year after the first occupancy, so this should be and then.
So,
then a year- then
what I
another-
would say is for a 2-year period, once a year, we ought
Right.
to do it twice. We
A
ought to
2-year
conduct this
period,
thing, yeah.
2-year period, once a year, starting 1 year after the first certificate of occupancy. The study should also include data and information regarding the impacts of trucking on the property at large, something along those lines.
So, but when we talk about trucking, are we talking about access to the, what would be the Avalon
No.
Bay property?
No.
Or that loading dock?
The loading dock.
Loading
So,
dock.
didn't we already decide on that? That was part of the
Yes.
other,
So
that's not this project.
Exactly.
Yes and no. So yes, we voted on the roadway, we voted on the layout. But I think to the point of if there are a line of cars coming out of Avalon in the morning and trucks coming in at the same time, and is there queuing and things like that, those are the things that we're not gonna, and is the turning radius actually working? Are they having to go around? What's the impact of that, those two things working together? So I think that's what I
I
want
can
to know,
understand
is what's the impact of the things working together?
Yeah. But in terms of turning radius of trucks.
No,
and
no.
such, that's-
No, the impacts of how it's working.
So I agree with the 2-year. What's the remedy?
That we can, board actually has the power to modify a decision, if there are a substantial change.
What sort of modifications would be possible?
Depends on what the, if, to the parking, say the parking is the problem, if, with those.
Yeah, I
the
mean, I
parallel
think
ones.
what we might find, it's entirely possible, we might find that the parking on that street, we have to remove the parking spaces to make the right-of-way. I mean, because if it's a 50-foot right-of-way and we have a 26-foot wide traffic lane, I think it's a legitimate point that was raised. Maybe we need 28 or 30, we just don't know yet.
So we're gonna measure it twice, and that's a potential remedy.
Yeah.
Do we need to state potential remedies?
I don't think so, because I think we don't know what, if any, it would depend on if there is a problem and what that problem is.
Right.
Right, is it queuing, then if it's maneuvering, then maybe it's removing parking spaces.
So-
If it's queuing, maybe it's requiring signage or requiring them to put something in to say where people can go, or.
So then, just for the sake of the discussion here, this expanded requirement to measure twice over 2 years instead of 1 year, it's not just a measurement, it's a measurement that could result in remedies and the potential, and in fact, there are potential remedies.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and remedies.
We just talked about it.
Changes to the plan.
Well, hold on, we just discussed examples of the remedies.
Right, but you discussed a vague remedy. You're gonna have your curbing, you're gonna have your building.
No.
Let's
No.
continue.
There were specific examples.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If we have minor typographical type of corrections, should we just deal with Gene on those, or rather
Yes.
than take the board's time on those? It's really.
No, I'd rather do them, if you have them, I'd rather do them. Let's finish going through, I'd rather do them as much as we can, do them now.
Okay.
So we'll finish going through, and then if you have to have them, let's do them now. Hold on, let us finish going and then tally them up. Okay. Private trash pickup between 7 AM and 5 PM, that's acceptable? Okay.
Gene, where's the change to the required fill that you talked about earlier?
It's coming up, I guess. I don't know the exact number, Peter,
Okay,
but I can
all right.
find it.
44 talks about Phil.
I wasn't sure if that was the right spot or not.
It's a special condition. What do you
Okay.
mean, as far as the placement within the, before construction, or before?
You had talked earlier in the discussion about that the type of fill
Yeah.
that would be allowed was restricted for this project.
Right, so clean fill, no trash, refuse, rubbish, debris.
Okay, so that's 44.
Yep.
Right, okay.
It says processed glass, aggregate, concrete, recycled concrete, aggregate. So it cannot have any of that,
Okay.
okay? And the reason it's in that special condition is it's gonna happen at some point in the process. I don't know exactly where they're gonna bring in fill.
Okay.
So it will obviously be during construction, but I wanted it ahead of that.
Bond, whether it's a cash bond or a surety bond, does anyone have any preference?
Rather have cash, but I don't think you can dictate it.
Yeah, so that was a question David asked me. Legally, we'd have to take surety. We always encourage cash. I have not taken a surety, to be honest, in 10 years. We've had to release some sureties from definitive subdivisions done in the 80s, but other than that, it's been cash. So,
So we're not gonna specify.
Good, thank you.
like I said, we can't specify, but finance has urged us to
Yeah.
try to get cash.
59 debris has 2 Ds in it,
I'm sure somebody was going to point that out to me.
extra debris,
59?
yeah. All public ways are to be kept clean. So the DEPT should be kept
There's
clean.
an extra 2 and 49 in the first line.
I'm sorry, 59 I was talking about, sorry. Sorry, I was talking about 59, sorry.
Yeah. Eighton, I'm sorry, in 59, debris?
59 debris has got 2 Ds in it.
Yep. Did you point out
and-
another one?
and all public ways are to be
Kept, yep.
kept clean.
Do the public ways include both the roadway and the sidewalks?
Not typically.
Which one are you looking at?
59.
59.
So typically it's a street sweeper that doesn't do a sidewalk. And it's from the trucks, the wheels.
But
bringing
they,
the
I
dirt
mean,
down.
the
That's what-
public way includes the sidewalk, so it's part of the public way, so.
I
So
don't
just leave it
anticipate
the way
dirt
it
from
is,
the
it's gonna be
trucks.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't anticipate dirt from the trucks getting on the
Yeah.
sidewalk, but
Yeah.
it's usually sweeping, so.
60, the word vehicles is just contractor's vehicle.
Developers in the second to last line.
Yep.
60 at the end there.
So in 78, this gets to the earlier comment about public way. Why couldn't we just say in the last line, adjacent roadway or sidewalks?
It's fine.
Do you mind if I make one comment prior to 78?
Go ahead.
On 74, I believe that's a duplicate of an earlier condition 40. It's a little bit slightly different language, but it's the same intent.
No, so when was during construction, where you're not gonna have a clubhouse to post this in a centralized location?
Right.
We still need them provided to us, so we still,
Right.
in the construction trailer maybe at that time?
Right. Then just one other request. Can we take out the self-closing automatic locking mechanism language, just because I don't know how to, I don't know how do you do it on a, without, there's no lobby?
So,
Okay, so,
we actually need to take a quick 5-minute recess. Do you have some other typo ones? Yeah. So why don't you bring those to Gene in the 5-minute recess? We're gonna take a 5-minute break and then be right back, okay? 5-minute recess, do those. Okay, go ahead, Nick. All right, we good? All right, thank you. Sorry, I have a sick kid, 4-year-old with a sinus infection, and the pharmacy closes at 9. So thank you all for your time and consideration. Okay, all right. We make typo corrections?
we made typo corrections, nothing substantive.
Okay,
Definitely typo as I started doing the red line edits, I didn't do a spell check after that.
okay.
Condition 61, I just want to point out, is the condition for the construction management plan. That's the one that has to be adjusted to account for this sequencing of site work as well. So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I you know, was discussing it, and we thought that we would add, and it says not limited to, and then there's a whole list of things we would study. We would add one that said earthwork operations and protection of adjacent properties with oversight by a geotechnical engineer.
Okay, good. Make it so. 60, did you get, there was a typo on 60, it shall be the developers or the Delville?
Yes, I got it.
You got that one?
Yep,
Okay.
and vehicles.
Okay. All right. I don't have any more. I don't know if anyone else has any more? More? No? Okay.
Just the numbering is, yeah.
We'll fix the numbering. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we get a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing is closed. Okay, discussion. Anyone want anything else to say about, before we vote?
No, I just want to reiterate that I thought Gina Monica did really exceptional job at drafting this decision in such detail, laying out the reasons why we can make a decision like we have, and then putting in appropriate steps at every step along the way. I mean, you could specify lots of things, which we have, and I think in addition to that, we put conditions in so that we can monitor things down the road to catch things that come up, and I think we've hit everything. I can't think of anything more, so I think you've both done a great job in putting this together.
Aaron, anything?
Nope.
Okay, okay. So I just want to thank everyone who's come out to all of these meetings since, what, July? Did we start in July? I And I don't know if you felt like, I hope you felt like your voices were heard. I don't know if you do or not. But I think that the comments that you've made have been put in, at least to an extent, have been put into this draft decision. Things have been changed, maybe not to everyone's amount or satisfaction, but I think it's been an important part of the process. I think it'll come with a lot of good information, data, and things for us to think about and discuss while we've been doing this. And it's definitely not an easy decision for us to have, for the staff to have crafted, for us to review or to decide on. But I think we appreciate all the interest and the comment that you've all made. Okay, so we'll do it as a motion to approve. 4 votes are needed to approve. So get a motion to approve Sub-District A definitive master plan special permit for Phase 2 West Mill Development. Petition of Avalon Bay Communities, Inc., 600 Atlantic Avenue, floor 20, for a 170-unit, 4-story, 2 buildings, as described in the permit that we just discussed, as amended. We get a motion? We get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. 4-1. Approved 4-1. Okay.
Thank you very much to the board and to Gene and Monica for their help getting through all this amount of information. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. New public hearing, 505 Sutton Street, modification, application for special permit modification, site plan review, multifamily housing, height waiver, and common driveway on under sections 195 4.80, 195 2.2, 195 7.4, 195 8.8, 195 8.10 of the North Andover zoning bylaw, Mass General Law 48, Section 9, to revise the notice of decision and site development plans to reflect the proposed 3-story building to the rear of the parcel and a 4/3-story building to be situated along Sutton Street. Building 1, the project is located within the B2 zoning district. Hi.
Hopefully this is a little shorter than the last one. Thank you.
See how it goes.
Board. Eric Loaf from Minko Development, here representing the 505 Sutton Street application. As you know, we went through a somewhat similar process of getting this project approved. And one of the things I think that happened at the end, we were, as you recall, tussling a little bit over a 3-story building and a 4-story building, whether they're going to be in the front or the back. And the decision at the end was to move the 4-story building to the front, put the 3-story building towards the back of the site, building 3 closer to the Surrey Drive, to reduce the impacts there. So I think that's what ended up in the decision and what was voted on. But unfortunately, the decision still referenced the existing plans at the time. The existing plans showed it the other way around. So as part of the decision, we're supposed to go record the plans at the registry, bring them back. And we looked at the plan and said, well, we don't want to record the plans that don't jive with what the decision says. So subsequently, we spoke with Gene and said, what's the best way to do this? And I guess we initially thought maybe it could be done administratively, but it seemed like it made more sense to have a real meeting, come in, and make sure that we're referencing that the decision and the plans are all in agreement, and that's why we're here tonight.
So I'll just make one technical comment, because in thinking it through, I think the original permit and plan set has to be recorded, and then this recorded subsequent, because this is modifying that one, and so
Okay.
it's just technical, but
So
we
should-
need that audit trail that goes
Okay.
with it, so.
Gene, anything else you want to tell us about what we're looking at here? So
Um,
the modification is,
This is, so if you see up on the screen, this is the original plan, and it's referencing the three-story building with a building height of 32.5 feet, 36.5 feet, and the rear, which was the four-story, which had a building height of 52.30. And then I'll cast the new plan, which has been revised. So now this is the four-story building, and you'll see it has a building height of 54.4. Then the rear building has a building height of 46.1. And if you recall, the grading changes. So at the front of the parcel, yeah, it's at a lower grade, and at the rear, it increases about 10 feet.
So that 36 number that was back here, the 36 for this one, whoop. Can you just explain the difference of this? Explain it, Eric, you want to just tell us what so the numbers are different. You want to just explain that for us?
Right, so I asked our engineer how we ever got the 36 that we saw in the original plan on a three-story building, because we couldn't do that unless it was a flat roof. So he had a mistake in the original set of plans. So
Yeah.
in our mind,
Oh, I'm sorry, I did
a
those.
four-story building is always going to be about 55, say 11 feet per floor plus the roof structure. So it should have always said 46. So when the front moved to the back, it went, from 46 to 46. When the back moved to the front, it flipped over. So the 36, I guess, was never a real number, so I don't know why that was in there.
And the elevations on the original set shows the 46, the elevations on this set.
Shows
the
46.
Shows 46,
Okay.
yes.
Reminder again, the roofs, these are not flat roofs, they're gabled roofs?
These are gabled roofs, that's right.
That was always what the plans were, right?
That was always what the plans were. I think in one of the first meetings, we talked a little bit about it, and at least from our perspective, didn't think it would fit in as well in the neighborhood if they were flat roofs. It looked a little more commercial.
Okay. All right, so these plans. Okay.
So, just so that I'm clear, how many stories is the building along the street? How many stories is the building in the rear of the lot by the neighborhood?
The building by the neighborhood is now 3 stories, the whole building. The building up front, because it had a longer footprint than the one in the back, it's 4 stories, and then it steps down to 3 stories closer to the senior center. So instead of shortening the building up, we said, instead of having all 4 stories, we thought we could break it a little bit, and I think that'll work a little better, so I think we're pretty happy with that. And then the one against the, closest to the China Blossom is 4.
And then you'll notice I have the elevations here, on the end caps, there's a jog down.
So that's on Sutton Street as you start to abut the senior center.
That's looking at it from the parking lot, I guess you'd say.
And so the height waiver special permit had conditioned, the plans have to come back to the planning board. And again, we had discussion administrative or public hearing, we opted for the public hearing. All 3 permits have to be modified because all 3 permits reference the old plans. So they're not substantive changes other than updating the plan set and then maintaining all the same findings of facts.
Okay. Anything else? Any members of the public wish to make any comments about this modification? No? Any questions, comments? And you can look at the decision. Obviously, the 3 stories at the back of the property is what we stated in our decision. We stated 4 stories at the front, so the 4 to 3 is nice. I'm glad that works out for you guys. Where are we in the terms of where everything is, what's happening over there? In terms of the actual project?
Okay, so the,
What's our update?
the bids are out for the senior center. The general bids are due back in on Thursday, so they'll be open late Thursday afternoon. It's anticipated there may be a warrant article, depending on what those bids come in at, for funding. And there'll be a warrant article associated with the purchase of that parking lot, the adjacent lot that we have permitted as a lease or purchase in our permit.
Okay.
You
And
can-
Eric, what would be the construction timetable after, if this is approved?
We're working on construction drawings now, and I think probably late summer, early fall is realistic for us to get into the ground.
Okay.
So our best-case scenario, we'd like to turn it over to a contractor by the end of June, so late June, if all goes well.
Okay, all right, so, anybody have any comments about the, height waiver? So we have a height waiver special permit and a common driveway special permit modification, is that right?
Just to show I looked at this thing, I noticed you made a typo.
Okay, thank you. Apparently I've made a few today.
The bolded thing at the bottom.
Which one are you on, John?
Waiver.
The height waiver?
I think you went dyslexic there, or,
Oh, that's mine, that's my standard thing. I am slightly dyslexic,
So that
That's
that
okay.
carries forward?
I swear, I get the same ones backwards, I just like type in a different order, so that's the kind of thing I would do.
sorry.
All right, so can we get a motion to approve the height waiver special permit as amended?
I just
Okay.
have one quick question,
Okay.
just on the common driveway special permit modification, it looked like insignificant changes in 19, there's just a couple of words added.
Yeah, it was just further clarify that there is no, like, the project owner senior center, project owner 505 Sutton isn't really a defined term, so I tried to just specify adjacent to senior center development.
And is there a reason for the expiration date change in paragraph 34? Was something held up that makes that necessary?
No, because this modification is now being issued February 25th. It expires 2 years from this date. So the previous original one would have expired in '21. And so each of the permits has that same date change, or should.
I'm good.
Okay. And a motion to approve height waiver special permit.
It-
All in favor? Aye. Get a motion to approve notice of common driveway special permit modification.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Can I just go back to the first one? It was John.
Yes.
John is the motion and Peter is the second. And that one was Kate as the motion and.
Aaron is second.
Aaron was second.
Everyone's getting involved. Okay.
The multifamily, you have to do the.
Oh, there's a third
so
one?
There's a third one, yeah. This
Ah.
is the main development, so the multifamily housing,
Okay.
reduction in parking, screening and landscaping special permits.
Looking for the change, and again, this, it's just the plans that are really changing. right? The-
is.
Okay. Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the site plan review, multifamily housing, reduction in parking and screening and landscaping special permit modification?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. So now the permits match the actual plans, but everything else is the same. Okay.
Great, thank you. And do you know when town meeting is yet?
May 19th, Tuesday, May 19th.
Thank you all.
See you there. Okay. Next. So for everyone's information, I think we really have till 11 o'clock, and then we need to turn off the cameras, and we really can't meet without the cameras. So just everyone keep that in mind for timelines. 127 Marblehead Street. Application for site plan review special permit under Part 3 in Section 195, 10.7 of the North Andover zoning bylaw. Applicant proposes to convert the existing building into a 4-unit multifamily structure with parking for 8 cars at the rear and north sides of the property. Project is located with the R4 zoning district. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Rick Byers. I'm representing the applicant. It's Sen One Realty Trust, but the actual owner is, it's Jean and Anne Marie Fay. I'll try to talk until I lose my voice, which you might be happy if I do, I think, at this point. I'll just give you a brief overview of where we are at this project. And just first of all, with me is TJ Melvin. He's the engineer on the project for Moore and Cameron Group, and Anne-Marie Fay is sitting behind us. This property, if you recall, had been Franny's, a well-known convenience store many years ago. And at that point in time, it was Franny's on the first floor and 2 residential units on the second floor. Although some of the old-timers in the neighborhood seem to recall there might have actually been 2 commercial spaces on the first floor at one point. Back in 2017, in December, I met with Gene, who was sitting there, and Eric Kafori, after my clients had purchased the property, and we were trying to decide how to go about redeveloping it. If you're not familiar with it, you probably are. It's been a boarded up kind of a mess for a long time.
We went to town meeting and got the zoning, we got the
Exactly.
zoning
Yep.
approval.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep,
So,
and-
what's town meeting, zoning approval, now you've gone to the ZBA?
We've gone to the
Okay.
ZBA, yes.
What did they approve?
They approved the 4 units,
Yeah.
4 residential units. And because it was deemed abandoned, we had to apply for every variance that we would have been grandfathered in. So got all of our approvals.
Okay.
So we're basically here now for site plan review because of the creation of the parking.
Yeah, so tell us about the parking. I mean, the residential units obviously fits in perfectly, that's with that neighborhood.
Yep.
But having lived across the street from there,
Yeah.
parking can be tight.
It's
So
tight, yes.
Tell us
And-
about your plan for that.
So what we had designed originally, Phil Christensen had came up with this scenario behind you. We need 7 spaces. He put in 8 with a tandem, 2 spaces per unit. Each unit would be designated, obviously, so you would have, unit 1 would
One
would
and
control
two.
1, 2. That way you're not juggling, other people and knocking on people's doors to have them move their cars. It's not, an ideal situation as far as parking. We're dealing with an existing structure. It's a very small lot, as you know. So that's where we're at this point. But we did get, like I said, we went through zoning and they approved everything we needed to get to this point.
Monica, where are we on our end?
On our end, we've sent everything, actually, the applicant submitted their plans for stormwater review due to the increase in impervious surface. We haven't received a report back from them yet, just to make sure that due to the increase in impervious surfaces, it's draining correctly. Also, John Borghese had some concerns in regards to the width of the driveway. This area is part of the reconstruction due to the gas emergency, and so they've asked the applicant to work with them in order to deal with that. The standard width of the sidewalks is, of a driveway is a maximum of 25, but they're asking for 27.
Sorry, just
We
to,
want more.
But we did get a variance on that.
So why
The 2
park,
feet.
okay, so the parking's on Middlesex, not on Marblehead.
Right. There's parking on Marblehead for 2 cars and parking for Middlesex for the remaining of 6.
And what are you putting out front? I mean, it used to be that the cars would park right out front, kind of like on the sidewalk on Marblehead. So what's there, is that where the building is gonna be, or what's there now? Is that just sidewalk?
We're gonna rebuild the sidewalk the way it
Rebuild the
should be.
sidewalk.
And actually put in some landscaping in the front, which has been paved over. Which I know was a question a couple of years ago when we went when I came to this board before the town meeting vote. I think somebody had mentioned, will you redo the sidewalk? We said, of course, yeah, that's, actually put a curb back, which would be nice.
And again, this, as DPW noted, that this area is part of the restoration. That's why they wanted to speak with them in regards to the sidewalk and driveway. 'Cause
Okay. What's there now where the parking is proposed?
out back is just currently, it was overgrown, it's been cleared in the past year or 2. It's just maintained as lawn. There is 1 tree.
Okay.
So it's lawn area.
Okay, not building or anything like that.
No, and we don't really propose to change the footprint of the building. There'll be some architectural changes to the building itself, but no increase in the square footage of the footprint. And I know Monica had mentioned the stormwater review. As part of our submittal, we had requested waivers from the drainage maps and the stormwater calculations, just due to the fact that the stormwater, Massachusetts stormwater standards don't technically apply to units, developments of 4 units or less. And where we're increasing the square footage of impervious by about 500 square feet. We didn't see the benefit of doing a full stormwater design. We're willing to look at options as far as pervious pavement to mitigate some of the runoff from that. So that's, just wanted to follow up on the stormwater review aspect, that we did not provide any stormwater calculations and haven't heard anything back.
Conservation would like to see, suggested that they look at some roof drains due to the pitch of the site. So
I mean,
it's not a significant, however, yeah.
And Middlesex is pretty slanted, so I think it's worthwhile at least. If you can get some information on how to mitigate that 500, that would make
Okay.
us feel a lot better.
Would pervious pavement be something that the board would be favorable of, just?
Yeah, anything that, I mean,
Just, it's-
anything to reduce what you're creating. If you can
Yeah.
make that a net zero, then that makes us happy.
Yeah, just
Close to it.
Yeah, based on the grades and the size of the lot, everything drains towards that bottom left corner as it's shown on the screen. We have about 3 feet between the pavement and the property line. So anything structural, as far as a stormwater BMP, would be tough to get in with the grades.
Okay.
So that's why pervious pavement was really our best option.
The fence there, on that side of the property next to the other house, you know, like, wondered where.
The Trombley house? Well,
Yeah,
what
one and
was the
two,
Trombley
like, I
house?
mean, if you're gonna have 6 cars there, it's gonna be a fence.
We weren't proposing fence at this point, but we'd be open to putting a fence in, just some sort of privacy and
I mean, yeah,
separation.
it's probably between you and the
Definitely
person
some kind of
next door. I mean,
screening.
if they didn't want it, then you didn't do it, but if they did want it, I think it would be good to do it.
Right,
Yeah.
and we did talk about screening at the zoning board.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
Okay.
plantings possibly in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any public comments? Come on up, sir.
Dave Scheifert, 266 Middlesex Street. I own across from this building. Franny's had 2 stores on the first floor. One was a
Okay.
hardware and one was a candy, and he also sold beer and wine. The parking.
To the same people?
What?
To the same age people? Don't answer that, don't answer that.
There was always electric company trucks that showed up at noontime. That was years ago. I've been waiting since Gene bought it, to have my lawn chair on the corner to watch the first dumpster be filled, because this is a total eyesore. The parking that is proposed is definitely safer than what's existing, which is in the front, on the sidewalk, at the stop sign. You know, when Gene first approached us, you know, say, was doing this project, our concern was the parking in front, that would be done away with, which the proposed plan does. So we've been waiting for years for this to happen, so, you know, we're definitely in favor of it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hi, I'm John Camozzi, 283 Middlesex Street. I live 2 houses down from the proposed site. My problem is the water, the pitch. Right now, there is, as the gentleman said, there is a tree there, but it pitches towards my neighbor's yard, who lives now in the Tremblay house. And if he paves that all, I just want to know, where is it pitching to? Because if it pitches towards, you know, if it was overgrown trees, it's now going to flow in. And right now, I'm the one with the hose coming out. I already have water in my basement, I get it all the time, and I'm just gonna get more. So I just wanna know what the plan is with the pitch. And the other thing is, across the street, it's 100 feet from Marblehead Street to 100 feet onto Middlesex Street. There's no parking on the even sides. I was wondering if it's gonna be the same with the odd. There's no parking from a telephone pole to the corner on Middlesex Street. It's 100 feet down. 100
Nothing
feet.
about this would change any of the no parking.
So is there currently no parking then on the odd sides? There's no sign posted, but if there is
I
on the
don't
even
know.
side, would there be on the odd side?
I don't know. I think on the even side, parking's allowed except for on,
It says, there is a sign from
Yeah.
here to corner, no parking, and I'm gonna guess it's 100 feet onto Middlesex Street, on the even side. So I'm wondering if that's the same as the odd side.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, I don't know. We can't condition the parking on the street.
I know you can't condition
Yeah.
it, but I was just wondering if anybody knew. Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. So, I mean, we've already raised it. Would like some real kind of solid answers. If we're not going to go through a stormwater, some real solid plans that we can at least look at and go through as to what's going to happen with water.
My name is Louis Capobianco. I live at 280 Middlesex Street. My driveway is right across from where they're proposing the 6-car parking. My only problem is that the parking over there is bad enough now. And like my neighbor said, and I know for a fact because it's right in front of my house, from the telephone pole on my side of the street to the corner, there is a no parking zone. And if this is proposed, I want to see no parking from the corner on the other side down 100 feet because they're going to block my driveway. I also have a travel trailer that I pull in and out of my yard. I won't be able to get in and out with my 30-foot travel trailer in and out of my yard with it if they park out on the street. I won't be able to make that swing. I'll be banging on the door every night.
You're saying if visitors or if there are more parking than the 8 cars?
If visitors parking, they're gonna park like this, stacked, they're gonna have to move their cars if people have to get in and out of, they want the car in the front. Where are they gonna park? They're gonna park on the street in front of my house. And believe me, I will call if they park on my side of the street because of the no parking sign. And yeah, I do park there every once in a while because I have 4 cars in my driveway. But if you go by, you can see where the apron is for my trailer. When they dug up the street and repaved it, they put an apron in so I could get my trailer in and out because there was never any curbing there. And the town was gracious enough to do that on their own. But now, I'll never get my trailer in and out, and I drive across my lawn to get in and out of my driveway as it is. That's how I get in and out
Well,
now.
We'll look into so like I said to the previous gentleman, we can't necessarily dictate parking, no parking, that's a Board of Selectmen issue, but we'll at least find out the answer there and see if that influences.
Okay, the
what we
other
allow
thing
and
with
don't.
that property is the gas line coming in.
Yeah,
The gas line is gonna be on the sidewalk, because they moved all of the gas meters on the outside. So that's now gonna be on the sidewalk on that intersection. They need to do a study on that intersection, because I can tell you right now, there's an accident there at least once a month. It may be minor, but in that intersection alone, there's been, and my wife got hit there, or my wife actually hit somebody that ran the stop sign, because they run the stop sign at that intersection all the time. You said you lived across the street, so you know where that is.
I did. I think your daughter babysat for my kids.
There you go. So, you know what I've been dealing with. I call in that intersection all summer long when I'm sitting out on the porch. The other thing is that's now gonna be my front view, is that parking lot. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Stewart, 281 Middlesex Street. I'm a direct abutter to this project. I just purchased the old Trombley house.
Okay.
I'm here tonight with my wife Ashley and my grandparents Frank and Sandra Stewart, who live at 101 Marblehead Street, very close. We are all in support of this project. We would like to see a fence in between the proposed parking area and my driveway.
Is there any fencing there now at all?
There's a chain link fence, but it's in rough shape.
Okay, so you're not looking for something to match that necessarily, something new?
Something new.
Okay.
And
Solid?
solid would be wonderful.
With the headlights, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This property has been an eyesore to the neighborhood for many, many years, and it would be great to see this revitalized.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so, got a little bit of homework. Why don't we continue the hearing till March 10th? Get us some stormwater, maybe some drawings and some information about the fencing. I'd like to know a little bit more about the parking situation, to see if there's anything we can do there, and we'll go from there. Great start.
As far as the parking, what?
Well, I'd like, I'll go down and look at it. I really wonder, what is the parking that's allowed on the street? Not that we can,
Release it.
well, no, we can, not that we can like dictate it as part of the decision, but I think it's a fair point that if there's gonna be, guests, right? So I assume we have 4 apartments, maybe 2 are they one bedroom, 2 bedrooms?
2 one-bedrooms and 2 3-bedrooms.
Okay, so I think 8 cars is probably fair, each with 2 deeded parking spots. If they do have visitors, where are those cars going to park is a fair question to be asking. So, the more information about what the parking is allowed on those streets would be helpful for us. Okay, continue to March 10th.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, everyone.
So I've had a request if it would be possible to take 1995 Salem Street.
Sure.
It's a quick discussion item.
Sure.
It's actually not shown on the agenda, however, there were packet items there, so it's at your discretion as to whether you will hear it.
All right, so 1995's
Salem Street.
Salem Street. I was not aware of this, or 1975 Salem Street.
75 is the original, it was a 3-lot land disturbance permit. The lot that we're talking about tonight is at 1995 Salem.
Have we heard this before? Has it come
This
before
is
us?
the one, Eitan, we had a discussion on, there was a land disturbance permit for the 3 lots. This is the 3rd of the 3. There was a limit of work that was, I guess, violated.
Okay.
Some of the trees that were removed were within the riverfront, so they've been before the Conservation Commission at last
Okay.
week's meeting.
Yeah.
And some of it was up a hill to the rear of the lot. And so the material in the packet today, Monica can describe it, but they've kind of showed the area where the trees were taken down. And so the Conservation Commission has really left it up to the administrator to implement a planting plan. There's a structure for that planting plan that was provided. So a restoration plan in the riverfront, and I would suggest we would want a restoration plan up the hill as well.
Okay.
And the real issue is, the house is ready for a certificate of occupancy. We've held that certificate of occupancy up until you review the limit of work and what has occurred.
Oh, right.
And the homeowners have been in a hotel, I was just informed today, for like 100 days now, so.
Okay.
It's somewhat urgent.
So, it's not since it's not a public hearing, it's a discussion item. I don't think anybody's prejudiced by the fact that it wasn't on the agenda, wasn't known to the chair, so discretion will take it. But we don't have a lot of time. So go. Or Monica, do you want to lead off and tell us where we're at and what we're doing?
As of right now, actually, Conservation met with the applicant this morning to go over the site and look at the replanting plans. After that, I did have a chance to speak with the applicant as well. So what they're proposing is a 1.5 to 1 replanting. So what they're suggesting is 2 trees and some shrubberies up where the grade changes. So at the rear of the site, if you see, I'll bring that. Actually, if you look here, it's kind of hard. It's kind of dark. They did they did some extra clearing. It's a steep grade there, so they're proposing to put some shrubs there, and then some of the trees that were removed here, some of the larger ones, would be replaced.
Okay. Go ahead.
So my name is TJ Melvin with the Moore and Cameron Group. As Monica mentioned, I met the conservation agent out on the site this morning to discuss possible areas and density of replanting. The plan I have shown here, the yellow line was the approved limit of clearing. The purple line is the existing today. The green areas along the front were the specific areas we discussed on our site walk, number of plantings, location. We have specified some species, but we're going to be altering that a little bit. So we're proposing just shy of 2 to 1 in the riverfront area, and I tried to replicate the same replanting density up gradient of the site. Tried to cluster the trees together as much as I could to bring some value back to where the trees are instead of just spacing them throughout the limit of work line and having a random tree in the middle of lawn isn't going to provide as much value. So I do have 9 more trees proposed outside of the riverfront area, bringing it to a total of about 18. I have about 40 shrubs shown on the plan. And this area along here, you may see hatched in green. It wasn't over cleared, it was something that the conservation agent asked that we reseed to get a little bit more growth going in that area. As the site currently stands, it's primarily stabilized. The driveway still needs to be installed along with the walkway. Just due to the stop work order back from October, we haven't been able to continue the work. So that's everything for the history of where we're at today. I can answer any specific questions. We expect a caliper of 1.5 inches minimum. We didn't specify any heights. But like I said, we will be working with the conservation agent to have an approved planting plan.
So we should bond something like this to make sure if you have purity and 1.5 inch trees, could be 5 years before it becomes anything.
So the project in total is bonded, do you have the amount of the bond?
The current amount now,
I think it's 10,000. No, we haven't released any, the other two houses are occupied already.
And so what, and is anything outstanding other than this planting?
The driveway construction, the pavement of the driveway and a walkway.
So is 10,000 enough to cover the driveway and the plantings?
You provided an estimate, was it 13.5 in
Uh,
total? Probably higher now with the.
I think we were a little higher, but
additionals
we
would be
also,
higher.
we also deducted the trees from conservation
Right.
jurisdiction because they also have a $7,500 bond.
Yeah.
So I think we came in about 16,000 is what we estimated.
Yes, but we have 10 and they have 7,500.
Yep.
And this planting seems to be more than your original proposal. So your original proposal, your estimate was 13,500, that included replacement of about 5 large trees.
Yep, yeah, so that was 5 in the riverfront and 5 outside, so yeah,
Yeah.
the trees have about doubled.
Yeah.
And we added some shrub.
So I would say 20,000. You have 10 now, and if they supplement that with another 10, that should cover everything. And conservation has an additional 7.5.
Okay.
So how did this happen, by the way?
when they went in, the inspector realized that they actually had built a different house. So we did our inspections, it's been monitored, however, when they actually started constructing it, he did notice that the house was slightly different and it had an increase of just over 200 square feet. But so at that moment, there was a stop work order from building. We had the original engineer review the site just to make sure that, the drainage hadn't changed. And you'll see that letter in the review in your packet as well, so.
Okay.
So-
We sent it back out for stormwater review, and to be honest, Sean, this has been ongoing since December, but putting it through a whole nother review,
So what happens next? So if we require an additional bond, what else do we need to do in terms of moving this forward?
So the permit runs with the land, we just have to monitor it to make sure. I would put a planting date on for mid-May.
Are we modifying the permit? Is that, what are we
You're doing
doing?
an insubstantial change.
Insubstantial
Yeah.
change, okay.
And you would condition that the planting plan has to be in place by May 15th. The staff planner has to approve the planting plan in conjunction with conservation. We should approve the same plan. And then I would put a deadline on it.
Okay. And allowing that insubstantial change will allow them to get their certificate of occupancy?
Yep.
Okay.
Can I just go back to your comment? Does that mean that we didn't notice what was happening? Is that what you were saying, that it was a different house being built?
It was slightly larger by about
Okay.
200 square
So-
feet.
It was larger than what they put the building permit on. So
Right.
the
Okay.
when the building permit came in, it matched the plan, and
Right. Was there an independent monitor on this project?
there is.
So does that go to the qualifications of this monitor? And does that, taken into account for future assignment of monitors?
Yes,
Good.
yes.
Question.
Um,
Okay, so does that all make sense to you guys? Any questions, comments?
And one other note, the developer of the property is in Lot 2, so he actually sits just behind this house, a little higher in the house. So the
All right.
developer is the one selling the house to the people that are gonna move in.
Okay, so no excuses, knows what's going on. Okay, so get a motion to approve an insubstantial change to the, is it a special permit?
Yes,
Land disturbance permit, and requirements of that being a planting plan approved by Conservation and Planning by May 15th, an additional $10,000 bond.
So the planting plan as soon as possible, installation by May 15th.
Planting plan as soon as possible, installation by May 15th, $10,000 additional bond, and we will have no additional concerns about the issuing the certificate of occupancy at that,
Yep.
as of the issuance of our decision. Okay?
So moved.
A second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved.
Thank you.
Substantial change. All right, thank you for working with planning to correct everything. Great job. All right. 21 High Street. Application for definitive sub-district A master plan under chapter 195, article 18, downtown overlay district. Applicant seeks approval of a definitive master plan for existing uses and improvements at East Mill to bring the property into compliance with the overlay district guidelines. No changes are proposed to the property for structures. The property is located in the IS and R4 zoning districts and downtown overlay district. 21 High Street application was made for planning board approval of proposed 3 lots definitive subdivision plan, approximately 18.5 acres, parcel of land located what is known as East Mill, located High and Water Street. Premises effective located within the IS and R4 underlying zoning districts, as well as the downtown overlay district, sub-district A, historic mill area. Hi.
Hartford with RCG, North Andover Mill LLC. I'm here with John Smolak and Phil Henry. So we, as we discussed last month when we presented the preliminary master plan, our intent with this application is to bring the site into compliance with the sub-district A and to create a 3-lot subdivision at East Mill. We're doing this so that we can move ahead with the East Mill Flats project, which you guys have approved, and that you also, we extended that permit. That's for the new building over on the pond. This allows us to finance that property separately, or that project separately, and to move ahead with the project. So what we're doing, the reason why we're moving it into sub-district A is because the existing buildings, we do need to adhere to the, it allows us to adhere to the more lenient overlay district setbacks, and also that was just the intent of the sub-district A. So this is actually, I'm sorry, Jane, I just got sidetracked because this is the old plan, so I just want to make sure we have the new subdivision plan.
Let me bring up the subdivision, sorry.
That's okay.
Are there abutters to this other than yourselves?
Yes, so there's the abutters on Water Street.
Water Street, okay.
There's the abutters at the Walker Road. And there's the abutters on Prescott Street.
Yes,
Okay.
224. Is this one?
We have a pretty lengthy abutters list for both sides.
I just remember the building being not particularly close to
It's not.
any other properties, right?
I mean,
'Cause
as far as, yes, we have legal abutters, but no, nothing is close.
Right, I just remember when we did the site walk way back, that it was really close, kind of more closer to the pond and kind of in the middle of the kind of like wet swampy area, and when the parking lot was gonna go around that, and then it just didn't seem very close to the roads as opposed to the Avalon project,
It's actually probably
closer to the
similar.
abutters.
I mean, it's probably, the Walker Road is right there. You can
Is it?
see in the
Okay.
aerial there.
You can see in the photo, Aton, that's Walker
Yeah.
Road in the lower left-hand corner. In the upper right-hand corner is Clarendon Street and Water Street.
Mhm.
So,
Water up there.
yep, so those are residential houses up top, and that's Walker Road to the bottom. And at the pond building, we did have a butter feedback. They were,
I remember that, where's the Flaps building?
It's on Lot 2.
lot 2 of the center of the, yeah.
Okay, all right, so yeah, it's 10 here, okay.
So we're not proposing anything new with this plan. As I said during the preliminary plan, all we're asking for is a change in the PDD plan had 3 phases. We're going to continue to have 3 phases with this project. Phase 1 is the historic mill building renovation, which is complete. That's on Lot 1. Phase 2 is the construction of East Mill Flats, which we've already had, we've come through and gotten the special permit for that. That is on Lot 2. We still do have in our PDD permit the ability to build another 89 units, which would have been on which would be on Lot 3 on the garage. Right now, there's currently no plans to do any development on that at this point. And if and when that does happen, we would come in for a special permit for Lot 3, which would be Phase 3 of this master plan. The subdivision road is, for all intents and purposes, a paper subdivision. We don't intend to build a subdivision road. We intend to use the existing driveway. We intend to keep the parking as it is now, shared parking among the uses, which is the intent of the Sub-District A. We have a lot of parking, in addition to the on-street parking. And so that's the extent of the plans. Phil can walk through any of the technical plans.
Reminder again
Details?
of the proposed composition of the flats in terms of apartments, numbers, sizes.
There's 51 units. There are
8 3-bedroom.
8 3-bedroom. I think there's.
Now it's
You're
you.
testing my. Actually, I have the decision right
The
here.
decisions in the packet,
Mhm.
yeah.
The majority are 1-bedrooms. So we have, I think, 29 1-beds, 8 3-beds, and the remaining are 2-beds.
So just from a technical perspective, because you're creating a subdivision with 3 lots, each of the 3 lots has frontage on that roadway, even though the large parcel obviously is not gonna have its access. Why did you just do it with 2? Why did you not just carve the big lot out as a Form A?
You mean the lot with the existing buildings?
Yeah, lot 1, I mean, sort of, why you've included in the subdivision, why not just Form A it separately?
It was really difficult when we were looking at it for an A&R so Form A. One is that we wanted Lot 2 to be separate from Lot 3. There is a separate parcel line there that was, remember there was the railroad right away was in there. And so there's some property line change there. So it was difficult for us to do the A&R without it being sort of a real, looking like a real chopped up lot. So that was why we decided to do the subdivision. We felt like it was the cleanest way to use the existing roadway, to keep everything with the existing parking, and to have those 3 different parcels that really go with the 3 different areas of the master plan development. So it was a natural way to split up the site.
Okay, I mean, Lot 2 is the only one you need to create a subdivision for. 1 and 3 have frontage on the existing.
They do.
I mean, not that it really
They do,
matters,
you're right.
but,
Mhm.
yeah, I just, it's like,
But but lot 3 wouldn't be accessed over the frontage.
So you
lot-
need a special,
yeah.
permit to.
Mhm.
No,
And we'd have
It's not on
to,
your
there would be,
frontage.
we would,
Right, oh, yeah,
you'd
yeah,
have to
you're
access
right,
it
3,
by
yeah,
crossing
so
over
that's
another
what I
lot.
mean, 2 and 3 kind of makes sense, but
Right.
1, that was my point originally, but you're right.
Mhm.
Doesn't really matter, I just.
We looked at
curious.
this, we sliced it and diced it a lot of different ways before we came up with this particular plan. And after going through it on the West Mill side, we thought, this is very similar in that we're following the existing roadway as it is. I mean,
I think it also kind of makes sequential sense, like treat them separately and carve
Yeah,
them out.
I don't in the end, I was just curious.
10 o'clock academics, awesome. Okay, all right, where are we on our end?
So it's gone up for department review. Let me see, which one are we working on now? Let me see. I think everyone understood that this was bringing everything into compliance with the overlay. One thing is that at some point when they do develop, or go for develop the next lot, we need to work with fire to locate another fire hydrant, but that's something that they can do at a later date.
Monica, I actually think that was all satisfied because we are adding a fire hydrant.
Okay.
That's true.
We actually did add a fire hydrant.
Yeah, it's
So
there. I'm
that's
sorry.
already there, yeah.
I'm
it's there.
sorry, that was,
Yeah.
I have an
So we
email
just
stating
clarified
that
that, yeah, no,
it's
it's okay. We clarified that with fire, and fire had said that we were all set.
I have an email, it's in the packet, sorry.
Okay.
So sequentially, it's important to approve the definitive master plan first, and then the subdivision. The subdivision is being brought in under the zoning of the downtown overlay, as we talked earlier. So I did actually draft decisions tonight, if you wanted to entertain them. The DPW has not returned comments on the definitive subdivision yet. That's the only thing that I'm just a little iffy about.
Can you guys wait till the next one? timing wise?
We can. I thought that John Borghese had, he didn't comment on this new plan, right? But otherwise, he commented on the old one? I
He
thought
did not comment on the old one, and
Okay.
I've reached out a couple times.
He did on the, maybe he did on the preliminary?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
So, other than that, we could add a condition that if he has any changes. that we-
I'd prefer to wait.
I'm just, reading something right now is,
Okay.
it all seems fine.
Okay.
But right now, everything seems fine,
So,
so
well,
let's,
again,
let's-
while we're at it, like the subdivision road, I get its paper, but is it a 50-foot right-of-way?
It is.
You're making any improvement, or you're keeping it literally the way it is?
We're literally
today?
keeping it the same way. We're gonna keep the parking on the roadway as it is. And we're matching it, I mean, the West Mill was designed to match
Yeah.
with the East Mill.
and is there any public comment? No. I just, and we don't usually do them in one, this is the first, right? So I'd like, at least, I don't think there's gonna be comment. It
That's
seems
okay.
pretty easy. Let's do it to the next one and get the draft decisions ready, just like we normally do. Okay.
I
so-
do wanna just say,
Yeah.
I did just get to answer your question, there's 25 one-beds, 18 two-beds, and 8 three-beds. That's the composition of the 51 units.
Okay, great. So can I get a motion to continue the public hearing until? March 10th, 2020. Good trip. So moved? Second by Kate, all in favor? Aye. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
210 Holt Road, request for a waiver of site plan review associated with the reconstruction of the recycling facility. Come on up, we'll do that.
All right. Yes.
And then we'll do Osgood and the I-2 zoning together. Hi.
Jeff Thompson, 44 Sutton Hill Road.
All right, what can we do for you, Jeff?
Just looking for waiver. Monica indicated that we needed approval from the planning board. Building's going in the exact same footprint. There's no change in use. It'll be the exact same building, same height, same dimensions, no changes whatsoever.
Monica, what's going on here?
So we actually had a TRC, a technical review committee meeting approximately 2 weeks ago. So we had all the departments together to discuss this parcel. Mr. Thompson indicated that he wanted to rebuild the facility. If you recall, last summer he had a fire at his recycling facility. So he's been kind of out of commission since then. So what he's proposing is to reconstruct a metal structure on the same location. During the review, fire did indicate that they did want a fire hydrant to be located on site, just simply because of that issue. They did have a chance to meet and locate a new where a new fire hydrant would be located. So they had that meeting this morning. So they've agreed to that. But simply because they're not changing the flow of traffic, they're not changing any parking, they're not making any other modifications, I suggested that he submit for a site plan review. A site plan review waiver.
Okay. So you find anybody issues?
No, I think it's fine. I think, as long as the powers that be just monitor what goes on, just to make sure everything is appropriate, I think it's fine.
Right, and what they'll have to do is when he pulls his building permits, the old structure was built under an older building code, so they'll have to review and bring it up to the standard, which I think is like the 9th edition. But that's something that would go through building and fire.
Okay. Motion to approve request for a waiver of site plan review, 210 Holt Road.
Yeah, given that there's no difference between that and the old building, so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 1600 Osgood Street. 1600 Osgood Street LLC, application for definitive subdivision approval. I believe we have an extension on that.
Yes.
Can we
so-
get the, well, I'll just call them all. 1600 Osgood Street, 1600 Osgood Street LLC, application for site plan review, parking special permit. 1600 Osgood Street, Hillwood Enterprise LP, application for site plan review, parking, building height, floor area ratio, special permits. 600 Osgood Street, 600 Osgood Street LLC, application for large-scale ground-mounted solar energy system, site plan review, setback modification, special permit, and Article 10, 185, 10.7A of Chapter 195 zoning bylaw, as well as amendment to I-2 zoning district discussion item. First thing we have under the definitive subdivision, a request for an extension of the date to decide the subdivision to March 30th, 2020. Can I get a motion to accept that extension? Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. All right. Attorney Smolak. Good evening.
Catch you at the right hour, 10 o'clock.
Well, do you know, you should take that as a compliment because we believe you know what you're doing and have been doing a good job on this project, so that we trust we don't need the extended brain power that we have at 7 o'clock. So, it's a compliment.
Whatever.
Fine.
Thank
Let's
you.
review this thoroughly. Let's go. What do we got?
Well, this evening, we just wanted to go through a couple of items quickly, where we are in terms of status. Just before we start with me is Mac Utzi of Hillwood, who's the Vice President of Development, Nate Kirshner, Project Engineer and Project Manager for Langen, Dan Leary, Solar Consultant, and also Michael Rosen, Attorney for the seller. Since our last meeting with the board, a number of items have occurred. We've also submitted a letter to the board back on February 18th outlining some of the approvals that we've received on the at the state level as well. And Monica, if you could just go to the next slide, which is just the site plan which you've seen before, but we just wanted to mention that we've submitted the peer review comments to Weston Sampson on, that's the water system peer review comments we received. We've submitted the sewer peer review comments to Woodard and Curran. We've also submitted a response to our definitive subdivision comments as well that were initially provided by Tech. And hopefully we'll have some final responses and close out fairly soon. We've also submitted our FAA hazardous navigation and Mass DOT airspace review applications, and we've obtained clearances on those ends for the Lot B building, as well as the temporary construction equipment, as well as the solar array. And back, if we can go to the next slide, Monica. Which is last Thursday, we had filed, because of the fact that we abut a railroad right-of-way, we had to submit a request to Mass DOT for clearance on that, and actually they determined there was no jurisdiction on it. That clears our way to an issuance of a building permit down the road. It's the same thing that East and West Mill had to go through in terms of their rail line. So they issued that last Thursday, which is another approval that we're happy with. Also, back on January 31st, on the next slide, Monica, Mass DOT issued a letter confirming our methodology for calculating average daily trips, which was a big hurdle for us because this is a fairly new type of system, and so we provided a lot of information data to Mass DOT. Nate, I don't know if you had anything to add on the traffic side for that piece?
No, I guess the only other, to piggyback on that, was the Mass DOT and then outstanding peer review comment letter from TEC for traffic specifically. The first step in kind of closing out those items was getting this letter from Mass DOT. We've since conducted the road safety audit meeting and are going through the road safety audit process. And then we have submitted the peak hour calculations to the DOT, which they didn't want to look at until we got resolution on the ADTs. They're reviewing that. That's the last item that's outstanding with respect to addressing all of TEC's comments and then closing out the peer review for traffic.
The daily trips, is that mostly for the employees, or is that the trucks coming in and out? or both?
The bulk of it is employees.
Okay. And is the trucks coming in, is that more staggered throughout the day or spread out through the day? I mean, employees are going to be, on the shifts mostly.
Correct,
you know?
right, yeah. The trips are really generated from the employee shift changes. The trucks are more spread out throughout the course of the day.
Okay.
And just in terms of this letter also, at the end of the letter, it indicates that we don't trip a traffic review threshold under MEPA. We'll be following up with MEPA as well, but just wanted to mention that because that's a big hurdle as well for us to move forward. Just in terms, Monica, the next few slides, our Related to solar, we've submitted an O&M plan, we've submitted a sign plan. These are old slides that we've shown you before in terms of landscaping. And if we could go to the next slide, these are the post-driven mounted panels. And then the next slide is just the asphalt mounted panels, just to refresh your memory on those. Also, we've submitted phase one. This is a signed plan, which is required as well, and to be posted at the site. And in terms of the next few slides, I don't think we'll go over the electrical plans, if you don't mind, the phase one plans, which are submitted and the fire department's reviewing as well. And this slide is basically showing you the location of the proposed sewer pump station for the town sewer line improvements program along Osgood Street. And so we just wanted to clarify that this is the location that the town had requested in terms, or actually the easement size that the town had requested through their consultants. It's about a 75-foot by 100-foot rectangle located close to the end of the property boundary at 1600 Osgood. And that will be permitted as part of a separate project by the town, as part of the MassWorks grant process, where we understand that process is today is that the town is finishing up the design for about 1,600 feet of sewer line at the existing Princeton property site where that's opened. And so instead of paving that stretch of highway twice, they're installing the dry sewer line pipe through that existing project area, so they don't have to reopen it again. And so once that design is completed, the town will complete the design for the balance of the sewer line, which will extend from, just after Bradford Street, southerly down to Sutton Street, minus that 1,600-foot segment. So that's occurring. And so what will happen is that once the town obtains approvals and constructs that pump station, we'll just happen to landscape around it as part of their separate project instead of having it part of this project. It doesn't make sense to landscape it now because we don't know what the design is looking like today. So just a few other matters. The Conservation Commission closed their hearing on February 5th, issued their order of conditions. They issued it a little bit earlier than we had expected, only because of the fact that they had quorum issues and wouldn't have another quorum for our particular project until April. So they issued the order, and we're satisfied, obviously, with the resolution of all those outstanding issues. Also, we met with the fire department and the building department, actually, in Monica as well, to go over the fire department comments and to identify sort of the construction sequencing in sort of very broad brush terms, because this is a very complicated project to get completed, because you're going to be moving solar panels, you're going to have to abate the existing buildings before demolishing buildings, and they're going to have to be sequenced so that buildings 20 and 21, the existing building, can continue to operate. So we had some good discussions there in terms of the requirements. And if we can go to the next slide, Monica. This is just an aerial of the main portion of 1600 Osgood Street, and with all the buildings numbered. And so just to give you some perspective, buildings 20 and 21 are staying. Everything else is going. And so some of the things, and Mac, chime in if you want at some point, but basically, the current owner could start to abate and to demolish right now, but we're holding off at this point to develop a sequencing plan for the abatement and construction. What's going to happen is that there'll have to be, again, internal abatement of the buildings, the internal components of the buildings that are going to be demolished. Then those will be demolished sequentially. There'll be some utility lines that'll have to be modified at buildings 20 and 21 to allow some of this work to happen. The solar panels will be moved over to Lot C that are currently on building 30 or 70, or 70. Those will be migrated over from rooftop to ground mounted as well. There'll be a lot of electrical lines that'll be modified as well. So we just wanted to let you know that a lot of that work is gonna have to happen before we even get to a foundation for Lot B. But we just wanted to update you, you know, where we are. And so that's basically a summary of where we are. We hope to bring closure to this shortly, but we're just waiting for a few more items, as Mac has indicated. And I'm sure you're tired of having us come at 10 o'clock every night, every Tuesday
I mean, if
for
it,
your meetings, but.
no, I mean, as long as we're moving forward, but if we have a meeting where you don't have anything, don't feel obligated to be here.
So that's where we are, and so I guess we're just requesting the board's continuance to the March 10th
Okay.
Meeting at this point.
I'm glad everything's, you know, moving forward. So we'll continue,
That's.
yeah, so we'll continue all 4 of the public hearings to March 10th? Yes. Okay.
Great.
Now you wanted to discuss
Yeah.
the amendment to I-2 zoning district.
Yeah, we talked about this in January, and I'll keep this very brief. This is just a set of sign plans that, some of which you've seen already, that are basically some of the ideas that we have both for Lot A and for Lot B. And everyone knows the sign bylaw is a disaster. So, to put it.
Disaster before I got it.
Well, I don't, yeah, probably a little bit before you were on. So, but I think that, you know, that sign bylaw, as you know, has multiple inconsistencies. And we all know that it needs a comprehensive rewrite. But what we're trying to do is, because we don't know when that rewrite's going to occur, what we're asking the board to consider is a zoning amendment to allow for a master plan by special permit, which is the same mechanism that was adopted for the Plan Development District back in 2009, and actually under the Sub-District A provisions in 2015. Just a mechanism to bring all the signage together because again, the bylaw, the sign bylaw has a section on permitted signs in business and industrial districts. Then 2 paragraphs down, it has a provision for industrial districts. And so different signage requirements for the same district, it just doesn't make sense. And also, there's a limitation of 200 square feet for a wall sign. So that might work if you're right up on Osgood Street at the front. But when you're 900 feet away, you're not going to see that sign. And so what we're looking for is just some flexibility on signage. And we think that through the site plan review process or otherwise, it makes more sense for the planning board to review sort of a program for signage, both for Lot A and separately for Lot B as well. And so we're looking for the board's consensus or actually support to go down this road. I don't think it's any heavy lifting. I think that, you know, we've identified it as being applicable to the I-2 zoning district. And I know that you're concerned about any unknown externalities here. I'm not sure there are any unknown externalities here. It's just the signage that's already allowed in a different area of the bylaw. And basically, we're just looking to have a more comprehensive program for signs.
So, one, I think I want time to discuss this with you know, with town staff, because I know that there is some discussion right now about as there always is, but a discussion overall to changing the sign bylaw,
Right.
which would be, I think, the preference to change everything at once. 2, I'm not sure why would we make a change to I-2 rather than just making it parcel specific if you're gonna do this and make it like a master plan for, I mean, if anything, I think your best argument is that this is so different than everything else, then why not have a sign bylaw for this Amazon Hillwood property on its own, because it is so different than anything else. So if anything, it would seem to me to make more sense to do it just to this parcel, and then you don't have to worry as much about unintended consequences.
Yeah. Just-
We can go for a sign variance.
Well, that's the third thing is, let's say we didn't change anything. What would you do? You'd go to the ZBA, right?
Right.
So you still have that option. So
Right.
I like the proactive approach to this and trying to find something that fits and then streamlines things. I just don't want to rush into something when we have other avenues as well, so.
Right.
Those are all the things that are swirling kind of around.
And I understand that you want to wait, you might want to wait to do a comprehensive rewrite of the sign bylaw, but the master plan was adopted, in 2018? And you guys have been inundated with different projects, staff's been inundated with projects. I don't know when the rezoning is going to occur. And, we just think that this is just more, and you've seen it with East and West Mill. I think it's a much more effective way to develop a signage program for a larger, sort of unique type of area.
Let's say we wanted to do this, what's our timing like for town meeting warrant articles? The warrant's open, right?
Yeah, it
Just
would
opened.
definitely be tight
Just
for
opened,
this
right?
year.
Piece of cake.
I like
So for
cake.
you to do this at this point, it would be, it's February and we're looking at May.
We'll give you
So
3
it'd be
hearings.
tight.
We'll give you 3 hearings.
I mean, there's all, if you really want to go the route, you always have the citizen petition route as well. So there's a couple different avenues, but,
Right.
something,
Okay, well, let's, tell you, what, we can keep it on the agenda if you want it for next meeting. Gives us time to really read it, to talk to staff, and to kind of see what our thoughts are, and we can go from there.
Yeah, we have no problem narrowing it. I mean, just like we did with the height and FAR, if you wanted to narrow it somehow in that fashion, that's not a big deal to us. I would almost advocate to just go the opposite way and have that ability for all the districts, but that's another discussion for another day. So,
Okay.
so that's it. I won't get into site plan review discretion, but if that's another area of the bylaw that you might want to take a look at.
See how much free time we have later.
Because
tonight.
I know that you like seeing us every 2 weeks,
Yes,
but
exactly.
you don't want to see us every 2 weeks after the permits are issued.
Okay.
And so there's not a lot of discretion that the planning staff has on site plan review, but.
Okay, let's
Anyway.
start with signs, we'll go from there. Okay, great, thank you
very
for bringing
much.
it to our attention, though.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you.
is there anything else?
No, minutes will have to be moved to the next meeting. I did not have time to revise them, so,
Fine.
sorry.
Motion to adjourn?
How are we doing on DPW, raw lake water testing to the
Oh,
board?
we did there.
I sent an email. Did you get my email?
I did, I just don't
regards
remember
to-
what it said.
It said, so I was directed to the water treatment facilities
Yep.
manager, who said that right now, they would love to come in, but they're inundated with their testing related to EPA and DEP. So they promised me that they would get back to me with some suggested dates.
So
Stay on
this
it.
latest request is coming up on a year, but we've really been looking to do this for a couple of years, so I don't think they've been working on EPA for a couple of years, but I look forward to hearing the dates.
Okay. I'll follow up with
I
them.
appreciate you working on that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So,
Thank you to Monica, too.
motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.